The sold sticker was already pasted across Grandma's yard sign when I pulled up the morning after her funeral. Grant stood beside it in yesterday's navy suit pants and a gray quarter zip, drinking coffee like he'd just completed a difficult merger instead of selling a house he hadn't walked through in years. The wet grass had darkened his loafers. "You're early," he said. "I have Grandma's casserole dishes." "Great. Put them in the kitchen. Buyers are keeping most of that stuff, but dishes are probably personal." "Buyers?" He nodded toward the sign. I looked from him to the second floor. The shade at the end of the upstairs hall was crooked, exactly as I'd left it. Beneath that window was the door with the brass lock. Grant held out his hand. "I need the key to Ruth's room." He called it Ruth's room when he wanted to sound tender. Every other time, she was Grandma. "You sold this house without opening that door?" "It's a spare room, Nell. You've never seen inside it. I've seen the whole house." "No, you haven't." His smile thinned. "The buyers know it's storage. What did you tell them was stored in there? Linens, boxes, old lady stuff." For a second, all I could hear was rainwater dripping into a steel mixing bowl 3 winters earlier. Grant wiggled his fingers for the key. "Come on, they do the final walkthrough next week. You promised them a move-in ready house." He lowered his hand. "Why did you say it like that?" The afternoon before, Grant had stood at the front of the church fellowship hall and made 60 people laugh with a story that hadn't happened to him. According to Grant, Grandma Ruth had once backed her Buick through the door of Collins Hardware, climbed out, and asked whether they sold replacement brake pedals. It was a good story. Grant did the shoulder turn, the purse clutched to his ribs, even Grandma's dry little cough before the punchline. Everyone loved it. I had been in the passenger seat that day. Grandma hadn't hit the store. She'd rolled into a display of bagged mulch in the parking lot, and afterward we sat behind the building eating lemon drops while she made me promise not to tell my mother. Grant had been living in Denver then. I was stacking paper plates when he finished, so I laughed too. "That boy could charm a snake into lending him shoes," Grandma's friend, Marcy, said beside me. Marcy was 73, blunt as a butter knife, and wearing a purple scarf Grandma had always claimed made her look like an airline stewardess for a bankrupt carrier. "He'd return the shoes," I said, "one at a time." Across the room, my mother dabbed at her eyes while Grant accepted hugs. My father stood behind him with one hand on his shoulder, looking proud in the solemn way men look when someone else is doing the talking. I had given the funeral home Grandma's preferred photograph, corrected the spelling of her middle name, chosen the hymns, found a dress that still fit her, and remembered that she hated lilies. Grant had arrived 20 minutes before the service with a framed picture collage he'd had printed overnight. It was beautiful. People kept telling him so. My mother found me near the refrigerator. "Nell, honey, are there more forks?" Second drawer under the coffee. I looked there. I opened the drawer. The forks were inside. She touched my wrist as if that made it less irritating. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I did. They would stand in front of drawers until I arrived. "Your father wants to take some ham home," she said. "Can you wrap it before people start picking at it?" "People are supposed to pick at it. That's why it's on a table. You know what I mean?" I wrapped the ham. By 4, the flowers had been assigned to various cars. The leftover cake had been pushed on Marcy, and Grant had somehow misplaced his tie. I found it draped over the men's room hand dryer. "You're a lifesaver," he said, looping it around his hand. It was one of his most effective phrases because it sounded like gratitude and functioned like a job description. We drove separately to Grandma's house. Mom wanted immediate family there for just an hour, which meant until the food was stored, the rental chairs were collected, and she had chosen what she wanted before Marcy came by to help me sort things. The house smelled like lemon polish and funeral carnations. Someone had lined the sympathy cards across the mantel. Grant picked one up, opened it, then put it back in the wrong envelope. "Please don't do that," I said. He looked at the card. "Do what? Make more work while pretending to help. Funeral really brought out your sunshine." Mom entered carrying one foil pan as if it were a wounded animal. Dad followed with nothing. "Kitchen?" she asked. Same place it's been since 1958, Grant said. She laughed. If I'd said it, she would have asked why I was being sharp. I carried in the rest of the food and found Grant measuring the dining room wall with his phone. What are you doing? Just checking something. For what? The buyers like the table, but they want to know if their sideboard will fit. I thought I had misheard him. What buyers? Mom stopped removing plastic wrap from a bowl that did not need its plastic wrap removed. Grant glanced at her, then back at me. The Hendersons. That doesn't answer the question. We got an offer. On Grandma's house? Dad sighed before anyone had accused him of anything. Let's not turn this into a whole production. There's a whole production? Mom folded the plastic wrap into a tiny square. Grant has been quietly taking care of things. That word quietly landed wrong. Quietly was how you replaced a furnace filter. Quietly was not how you sold the building where your mother had lived for 57 years. When was it listed? Technically, it wasn't, Grant said. Cal Henderson saw the photos and made an off-market offer. It saves commissions, staging, all that nonsense. It's a great deal. You showed strangers photos of Grandma's house while she was dying? Nell? No, I'm asking. She wasn't dying when we first talked. She was in hospice. People leave hospice. Grandma did, in a hearse. Mom shut her eyes. Dad said my name the way he used to say it when I had embarrassed him in front of company. Grant rubbed his jaw. This is exactly why nobody told you until it was settled. That sentence hurt more cleanly than the rest. Settled, I repeated. Mom accepted the offer Tuesday. Tuesday. I had spent Tuesday at the funeral home because Mom said she couldn't face choosing a casket. Grant had texted me at noon asking whether Grandma had ever replaced the upstairs windows. I'd answered from the showroom while sitting between something called Eternal Rose and something called Provincial Mahogany. I looked at my mother. You accepted an offer before we buried her. It wasn't disrespectful, she said quickly. Your grandmother hated waste. Every month that house sits empty costs money. It's been empty for 6 days. And Grant found a solution in 6 days, Dad said. You could at least acknowledge that. Of course I could. Grant could turn neglect into efficiency just by arriving at the end. I walked into the dining room. The oak table still had the faint white ring from the humidifier Grandma used during her last winter. I'd tried mayonnaise, baking soda, toothpaste, and a trick involving a hairdryer that made the whole room smell hot and dusty. The ring remained. They're buying the furniture too, I asked. Some of it, Grant said. They like the vintage look. It belongs to the family. We are the family. He meant the 4 of us. In practice, he meant the 3 of them, and whichever version of me was currently useful. Mom came in behind me. You'll have first choice of personal things. First choice? Within reason. I almost laughed. What does that mean? It means don't strip the house because you're upset, Grant said. I stared at him. He raised both hands. Bad wording. Is Grandma's sewing machine staying? I don't know. Do you want it? Yes. Fine. Sewing machine is Nell's. He tapped his phone screen as if entering a dinner reservation. Anything else? I could have named 100 things. The green glass bowl she filled with peppermints, the clock that lost 7 minutes a week, her yellow colander, the chipped ceramic bird by the back door that she insisted was a wren, even though it looked like a potato with wings. Instead, I said, "What are you getting?" Grant slid his phone into his pocket. Why does that matter? It doesn't. I'm curious, Mom answered for him. Your brother needs a fresh start. There it was, tucked between the dining table and the sympathy cards. Grant's restaurant partnership had collapsed in November. According to Grant, his partner was dishonest, the landlord was greedy, the customers had no loyalty, and the city had decided to tear up the street specifically to ruin him. He was 43 years old, but my parents discussed him with the worried devotion usually reserved for sailors lost at sea. What does his fresh start have to do with this house? Mom's eyes moved toward Dad. Dad studied the ceiling. Grant said, "After expenses, Mom and Dad may help me get stabilized." May. "It's their money," he said. "It was Grandma's house, and Mom inherited it." I looked at her. "You're giving him what's left." "You don't need help the way he does," she said. "That was the family's nicest way of punishing me." Then she added, "And you've had the benefit of this house for years." I didn't understand at first. "What benefit?" "You stayed here, when Grandma couldn't be alone. Nobody is criticizing that. You just called it a benefit. I'm saying you had time with her. You had use of the house." Grant didn't. Grant had possessed a key until he lost it at a football game and never bothered replacing it. I turned away before my face could do something they would remember longer than their words. At the foot of the stairs, I looked up toward the narrow hall. The locked room was at the far end. Beyond the bathroom and the guest room, Grant apparently believed constituted the whole second floor. "Has anyone inspected the house?" I asked. Grant gave a short laugh. "Here we go. Has anyone inspected it? The Hendersons are buying as is." "That isn't what I asked. They walked through. They love it." "All of it?" His eyes followed mine up the stairs. "There's one storage room," he said. "I couldn't find the key. I felt my own keys in my coat pocket, the brass one marked with a strip of faded blue tape pressing against my palm. That night, at my apartment, Grant texted me at 11:14, "Need blue key tomorrow, 8-ish. At 11:19, he added, "Please don't make this weird." I sat on the edge of my bed with Grandma's sewing basket at my feet. Rain tapped the window, soft and ordinary, and for a moment I was back upstairs 3 winters earlier, holding a steel bowl beneath brown water, while Grandma stood in the hall wearing her pink robe. She had looked past me at the opened wall and whispered, "Don't let Grant see this." Even then, after everything, she had been worried he would think less of her. The next morning he was waiting beside the sold sign. Now he stood on Grandma's porch with his hand extended while I separated the brass key from my ring. "What exactly is wrong with that room?" he asked. "You remember the storm 3 years ago?" "Not specifically. The roof leaked, then you patched it. I stopped the water." "Same difference." "No, Grant, it really isn't." For once, he didn't have a quick answer. He looked at the key in my hand, then at the upstairs window. "How bad?" he asked. I placed the key in his palm. "You sold it," I said. "Go look." He stared at the key as if I had handed him a live insect. "You're not coming?" "You're the one who needs to see it. Nell." I picked up the casserole dishes from my car and carried them past him. He followed me inside, letting the screen door snap against its frame. "You could just tell me," he said. I did. "The roof leaked. That covers everything from a stain to a cave-in. You should probably hope for the stain." He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Grant was in good shape, but he looked personally offended by the idea of climbing. I went into the kitchen and set the dishes beside the sink. Behind me, he called, "Which one is it?" "The locked one. There are 4 doors up here. Try the one your key fits." His footsteps crossed the hall. A moment later, metal scraped against metal. "It's not turning." "Pull the door toward you. More scraping." "Still not turning. Your other left." I know how to use a key. The lock clicked. Then came the shoulder thump I expected. It stuck. The floor swelled. "Push near the top." He pushed harder. The door opened with a long, woody groan, followed by silence. I put a casserole lid in the cupboard where Grandma had kept them. The avocado green one no longer matched anything she owned, but she had refused to throw it away because, as she liked to say, color did not affect containment. "Nell?" Grant's voice had changed. I went upstairs. He stood in the doorway without entering. Dusty morning light fell through the crooked shade, showing the room in stripes. The plaster had been removed from most of the north wall. Bare studs ran from floor to ceiling, some clean and pale, others dark where the water had traveled. Insulation bulged behind clear plastic. A section of floor near the wall was covered with plywood and marked with faded yellow tape. The rest of the room looked as though 2 different lives had been interrupted mid-sentence. Grandma's fabric cabinet stood beside my scarred workbench. A wingback chair waited beneath a sheet, one wooden leg removed. 3 dining chairs sat upside down with their torn seats exposed. Jars of buttons lined the shelf above an old black sewing machine. Under the window, Grant's cedar chest rested on blocks with its cracked lid propped against the wall. He pointed at the exposed studs. "Where's the wall?" "Gone. I can see that. Then we're making progress." "What happened to it? You can't dry a wall from the wallpaper side." He leaned in and sniffed. "Is that mold?" "It's old wood, dust, and the linseed oil from the chest. The wet material was removed." "By who?" "Me." "Then a contractor." "You hired a contractor?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell anybody?" "I told Mom. I sent pictures to you, too." He turned. "No, you didn't. I sent them in the family group. That group has 6,000 messages. Most of them are Mom asking if anyone wants a ham. That's why I muted it." I stepped around him and placed one foot on the strip of solid flooring along the east wall. "Stay where I step." He looked down. "Are you serious?" "Not especially. Fall through if you want." He followed me, placing his expensive loafers carefully on my footprints. There was no real danger of plunging through the ceiling, but some boards near the damaged wall had softened enough that I didn't trust them with Grant's confidence. He crouched near the plywood. "What's under this?" "More floor." "Damaged floor?" "Yes." "How damaged?" The first contractor wanted to replace 6 joists. The second thought 4 could be reinforced and 2 needed replacing. When was this? February, 3 years ago. He stood too quickly and grabbed the workbench when the floor creaked. "And it's just been sitting like this?" "No. For the first month, it sat like this with buckets." His mouth tightened. "Grandma lived here with the house in this condition?" "Grandma lived downstairs. The door stayed closed." "That's not an answer. It's the answer everybody accepted at the time." "I didn't know. You didn't ask." His gaze moved around the room until it reached the cedar chest. I watched recognition arrive slowly. "Is that mine?" "It was." "What do you mean, was?" "You broke the lid and left it in the garage." "I was 17. Grandma kept it for 26 years, so I don't think there's a statute of limitations." He stepped toward it, forgetting my warning. The board under his right foot gave a sharp crack. Grant jumped sideways and collided with the wingback chair. The sheet slid off, carrying a small blizzard of dust with it. "Jesus, you okay? Why wouldn't you cover that?" "It was covered." "You stepped over the tape." "This tape is 3 years old. It's practically beige." I bit the inside of my cheek. He saw it anyway. "You think this is funny?" "A little." He brushed dust from his sleeve. "You've been waiting 3 years to watch me step on that. I didn't know you'd ever come upstairs." That landed. Grant looked past me toward the hall. Grandma had moved into the downstairs bedroom 4 years earlier, after her second fall. From then on, his visits followed a predictable route. Front door, living room, kitchen if there was pie, then back to his car. He could be affectionate within a 15-foot radius. His phone buzzed. He checked the screen and immediately straightened his voice before answering. "Cal." "Hey, good morning." I watched him walk carefully toward the door. "No, I'm at the house now, just doing a final inventory." He glanced at the open wall. "Right. Yes, the dining table stays. The buffet, too." I folded my arms. "No, I haven't measured that wall yet, but I will. Your sideboard should be fine." A pause. "The upstairs room?" "Yeah, we got it open." He looked at me. Exactly what I expected. Mostly linens and some old project furniture. I laughed once. I couldn't help it. Grant turned his back to me. "No, that was my sister. Funeral leftovers. You know how that goes." Cal said something that made him smile. "Absolutely. Rena can come by if she wants, but there's really nothing worth making a separate trip for. We'll have it cleared before the walkthrough." He ended the call and remained facing the hall. "You just lied to him." I simplified. "You told him there were linens. There is fabric. Attached to an exposed wall. He's buying as is. You also told him the room would be cleared. It will be." "By who?" Grant finally faced me. "We have 10 days. I looked around. "Then you should get different shoes." He walked past me and started opening cabinets. Grandma's fabric was arranged by color, though her categories became increasingly personal near the bottom. Reds, blues, florals, good wool, ugly but useful. Grant pulled out a folded piece of green upholstery cloth. "What's all this worth?" "Not enough to repair the floor. I'm asking a normal question. So am I." He shoved the fabric back. It unfolded and caught in the hinge. "Stop," I said. "It's cloth. It's fabric." Grandma saved for the dining chairs. The dining chairs are broken. They're being repaired. For who? For us. Which one of us asked for 3 broken chairs? I took the fabric from him and refolded it. She did. His face softened for half a second, then closed again. Grief did that to him. It knocked, and Grant turned off the lights so no one would know he was home. He walked to the cedar chest. Was she fixing this for me? We were. Why? Because it was yours. He touched the split lid with 2 fingers. There were pencil markings along the edge where I had planned to cut a new support. Did she talk about me? The question was so quiet I almost answered kindly. Then his phone buzzed again, and he looked at it before I could speak. "Mom," he said. "She's coming over. She knows we're here." I told her there might be an issue. There might be? I didn't want her panicking before I knew what we were dealing with. You know what we're dealing with. I know what you say we're dealing with. He took pictures of the wall, tilting his phone to avoid including the worst section of floor. "Get the bottom near the window," I said. "That's where the sill plate is damaged. I'm sending these to a contractor. Send the whole thing. I know how to photograph a room. You also know how to use a key." He looked at me over the phone. I went downstairs before he could decide whether to laugh. Mom arrived 15 minutes later carrying 4 coffees and a white bakery bag. She had changed out of her funeral clothes but still wore yesterday's mascara, a faint gray shadow under each eye. "I brought breakfast," she announced. It was 10 in the morning. "Did you sleep?" I asked. "Some." She set a coffee in front of me. It had cream but no sugar, which was how Grant drank his. Mine was black. After 39 years, Mom still confused our coffee but could recall the exact brand of frozen pizza Grant liked in college. "Where is he?" "Upstairs." Her head tipped back. "In the room?" "That's generally where upstairs leads. Don't start, Nell." The screen door opened again, and Dad entered carrying the bakery bag Mom had left on the roof of her car. "You almost lost the bear claws," he told her. "I knew they were there. They were sliding. But they didn't fall. They could turn any mistake into a success if they stopped the story at the right moment." Grant came down holding his phone. "It looks worse than it is." "That's what your father said," Mom replied. Dad had not seen it. I sipped the wrong coffee. Grant took the black one from the tray, made a face, and traded with me without asking. Mom watched us. "Well?" "Some plaster's off," Grant said. "There's floor damage." Nell had somebody open everything up and then left it. My cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "I left it?" "You were managing the repair. I was stopping active water damage. Same project." Dad pointed toward the ceiling. "Is it structural?" "Yes," I said. Grant said, "Possibly." Mom looked at him because his answer was the one she preferred. "But it can be fixed?" "Anything can be fixed," he said. "That isn't a price," I told her. She rubbed her forehead. "I remember there being an estimate. There were 3. I remember 1. The cheapest was $22,000, and that was before they found the damaged joists." Dad frowned. $22,000 for one room? That's robbery. You said the same thing 3 years ago. We didn't have that kind of money. You gave Grant $18,000 that month." The kitchen went still. Grant pulled open the bakery bag. "That money was for the restaurant. I know what it was for. That was supposed to be temporary. Everything with you is temporary. The money's the only part that disappears permanently." Mom stepped between us, though neither of us had moved. "We are not doing this the day after Grandma's funeral. You sold her house the day before it." Grant dropped the bakery bag onto the counter. "What do you want, Nell?" The honest answer was too large for the kitchen. Mom reached for my wrist again. I moved my hand before she could touch it. "We need solutions," she said, "not blame." There it was, the family prayer. Grant took a breath and changed tactics. His voice became softer, almost reasonable. "You know the room. You know contractors. You already did the hard part by opening the wall. If we all pitch in, clean it out, replace the plaster, put down some flooring, no." He blinked. "I haven't even finished. You told Cal it would be cleared. Clear it. I'm talking about saving the sale. You said the sale was already settled." His jaw shifted. Dad looked at me as if I had refused to carry someone out of a burning building. "You would really let your mother lose money over this?" I set down the coffee. "No," I said. "Grant did that when he sold a room he'd never seen." Dad's face hardened. "That's a pretty cold thing to say. It's also accurate. Accuracy isn't always kindness." "No, but it's useful when selling real estate." Mom picked up the coffee tray. She didn't need to. It had nowhere to go, so she moved it from the counter to the table and straightened the cups into a line. "I want to see the room," she said. Grant glanced at me. "It's dusty. I gave birth twice. I can survive dust." Dad went first, using the banister like he was leading an expedition. Mom followed him. Grant looked at me, expecting me to bring up the rear and provide emergency services. I stayed in the kitchen. "Nell," Mom called from halfway up. "What? Which floorboards are safe?" Grant leaned over the upstairs railing. "Just come show us. You said it looks worse than it is. Could you stop making a point for 5 minutes?" Not this particular point. There was a low discussion above me, followed by Dad saying, "Well, I'm not walking on that." Eventually, I went up. Mom stood outside the room, clutching the doorframe. Dad was behind her, peering over her shoulder. Grant had placed one of Grandma's braided rugs over the weakened section. I picked it up. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Keeping someone from stepping through the ceiling. It looks better covered. That's usually how hiding things works." Mom entered behind me, holding one hand over her nose. The room didn't smell bad, but she expected it to, and expectation had always been one of her stronger senses. "Oh," she said. The single syllable held more belief than anything I had told her. Dad nudged a loose strip of plaster with the toe of his shoe. "This shouldn't cost $22,000. "That isn't plaster," I said. "That's part of the sill." He stopped nudging it. Mom stared at the plastic over the insulation. "Your grandmother let it stay this way?" "She didn't have $22,000. She had savings. She had 8 months of home care after this." Mom looked at me. "We helped with that. You visited." I did more than visit. I waited. Her eyes moved back to the wall. "I handled her insurance calls. You handled the first 2. Then you started forwarding them to me. Well, you understood the situation better. There it was again, competence as consent." Grant crouched beside the cedar chest. "The wood back here is dry. The leak was stopped. So what's the emergency? The house was sold as move-in ready." He sighed. "Cal isn't moving a bed in here. They're using it as an office or craft room. People generally like office floors that hold them." Dad walked to the window, stepping exactly where I had stepped. He pressed one finger against the darkened wood. "We can sister these joists," he said. Grant nodded, as if Dad had spoken fluent engineering. That's what I was thinking. Dad had learned the phrase, "sister the joists," from a home improvement show. The last major thing he repaired himself was our downstairs toilet when I was 14. It ran for 2 years afterward, and we were forbidden from mentioning it. "With what?" I asked. "New lumber. I mean, with what experience? You think contractors are wizards?" "No, that's why they're insured." Dad turned from the window. "I built the deck at our first house." Mom said, "That deck leaned. It settled. It leaned toward the grill." Grant stood. "Nobody is rebuilding the whole room. We reinforce what needs reinforcing, patch the wall, put down laminate. Cal gets a finished room. Done." "You have 10 days," I said. 9 working days. "Because water damage rests on Sundays?" He pointed toward my workbench. First, all this needs to come out. Agreed. Today. No. His eyebrows lifted. He had expected me to object to removing my things, not the schedule. I have a job, I said. I came for the casserole dishes. You're already here, and now I'm leaving. Mom stepped closer. Couldn't you take one personal day? I used my personal days for Grandma. No one answered. That was how most of her final year had been paid for, not with a single noble sacrifice, but with 40 minutes here, 2 hours there, a lunch break spent arguing over a prescription, a vacation day used after she fell asleep in the bathtub and woke frightened because she couldn't lift herself out. Small pieces of my life had gone into hers until everyone forgot they had belonged to me first. Grant opened his arms toward the room. So when? Saturday. The buyers may stop by before then. You told them it would be empty by the walkthrough. I'd like it empty sooner. I'd like Grandma alive. We're both managing disappointment. Mom flinched. Dad looked down. Grant stared at me for a long moment. Then he stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Take the sewing machine at least. I'm not carrying it downstairs by myself. I'll help. That offer was suspicious enough to keep me in the room. The machine sat on its original iron base, black enamel dulled by decades of cloth dust. Gold flowers curled along its side. Grandma had taught me to guide fabric through it by placing her hands over mine, though her method included slapping my knuckles whenever I got too close to the needle. Grant opened the cabinet beneath it. There's a foot pedal, I said. Don't yank anything. I'm looking for the cord. It doesn't have a cord. How does it run? You use your foot. He looked underneath. That seems inefficient. It survived longer than your restaurant. He closed the cabinet. Mom made a tired sound. Please. Grant and I each took one side. The iron base was heavier than he expected, and his fingers slipped. Wait, he said. Wait, put it down. We haven't lifted it. I'm testing the weight. You're touching it. Testing begins with touching. A voice behind us said, if this is how you two move furniture, Ruth will have plenty of company by lunch. Marcy stood in the doorway holding a cardboard drink carrier and a ring of keys big enough to run a county jail. Mom blinked. What are you doing here? Ruth and I were supposed to go to breakfast. Marcy lifted the drink carrier. She canceled, so I brought it here. No one knew whether to smile. Marcy looked around the room. Unlike my family, she didn't gasp. She had seen the damage before. She walked in carefully and handed me a black coffee. Bless you, I said. I assumed Diane bought yours wrong. Mom looked at the cup I had been drinking. Nell takes cream. Grant takes cream, Marcy said. I know what my children drink. Apparently, you know what one of them drinks twice. Grant snorted before he could stop himself. Mom turned on him, and he suddenly became interested in the sewing machine. Marcy uncovered the wingback chair Grant had collided with. Why is Agnes naked? The sheet fell, I said. Agnes? Grant asked. My chair. This is your chair? I paid Ruth $80 to recover it. When? Last spring. You left it here for over a year? She died, Grant. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I mean before that. Your grandmother and I spent more time talking than upholstering. I considered that a fair use of $80. Grant rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, you'll need to take it. Take it where? Home. I live in a condo. I brought it here because my hallway is 3 feet wide. You can't leave it. The house is sold. Marcy's hand remained on the chair's rounded back. What did you just say? Mom intervened. We accepted an offer. For the house? That's usually what people buy when they make offers on houses, Dad said. Marcy looked at him. Thank you, Paul. I was afraid they'd sold the sky above it. Dad went quiet. Grant picked up the sheet and folded it badly. The buyers are keeping some furniture, but not unfinished pieces. Everything in this room has to go. Marcy looked from him to me. Did you know? Yesterday. And she's not in prison. Give her time, Grant said. Marcy studied him for a moment, and some of his humor left his face. What? He asked. Nothing. I'm trying to see Ruth in you. That's a strange thing to say. Yes, Marcy said. I can't find her, Mom whispered. Marcy. What? We're all adults. Your mother is dead, her house is sold, and Nell found out after strangers. If we're going to act ugly, we can at least use clear language. Grant turned to me. Did you call her? No. Of course she didn't call me. I own a calendar. Marcy pulled a small notebook from her purse and opened it. What are you doing? Grant asked. Seeing who owns what. It's Grandma's furniture. No, it isn't. Agnes is mine. Those 3 dining chairs belong to Gloria Penn. The little table near the cabinet is for Tomas from the pharmacy. Ruth and Nell had a list. Grant looked at the furniture as if it had started multiplying. People left their property here? People trusted Ruth. They can come get it. Gloria's in Arizona until April. Then someone else can get it. Marcy looked at me. Do you have the list? In Grandma's sewing basket at my apartment. Grant threw both hands up. Why would you take the list and leave the furniture? Because I removed the basket before I knew you'd sold the house. Mom sat carefully on the cedar chest, then stood when the cracked lid shifted. Everybody stop, she said. We will make a schedule. We'll contact people. Nell, you'll help identify what belongs to whom. I'll identify it. I'm not managing pickup. Nobody said manage. You said schedule. I meant generally. With this family, generally means me. Grant pointed toward the sewing machine. Is that actually ours? It was Grandma's. And she promised it to Nell, Mom said. I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but she repeated it. Mom told me last Christmas. The machine is Nell's. It was such a small defense that it almost hurt worse than none. Mom remembered. Somewhere under all her accommodations and careful blindness, she remembered plenty. Grant exhaled through his nose. Fine. We take the sewing machine down. Together, we carried it into the hall, then paused at the top of the stairs while Grant tried to figure out how to hold the iron base without trapping his fingers. The doorbell rang. Dad leaned over the railing. Are we expecting somebody? Grant's phone buzzed in his pocket. He couldn't reach it without letting go. Get that, he told Dad. Dad went downstairs. Through the open front door, a woman's voice said, Hi, I'm Rena Henderson. I hope this isn't a bad time. Grant's fingers tightened around the sewing machine. Rena continued, Cal said you got the upstairs room open. I'd love to finally see it. I could feel Grant calculating whether dropping the sewing machine would be less damaging than allowing Rena upstairs. Dad called. Come on in, because Dad invited people into homes he didn't own whenever he felt awkward. Grant whispered, Put this in the guest room. The guest room is behind you. I know. You're backing toward the stairs. Then turn. You turn. We rotated the machine 6 inches before one iron leg caught on the hall runner. Marcy came out of the locked room and lifted the rug away with her foot. You two would lose a fist fight with a sofa cushion, she said. Rena appeared at the top of the stairs while we were still holding the machine between us. She was a compact woman in jeans, brown ankle boots, and a camel-colored coat she hadn't bothered to button. Her silver blonde hair was cut at her chin. She took in Grant, me, the sewing machine, and Marcy standing in the damaged room like an irritated museum guard. I definitely came at a bad time, she said. No, not at all. Grant's sales voice returned so quickly, I almost admired it. We're getting a jump on clearing personal items. Rena smiled at the sewing machine. Oh, good. That was one thing I wanted to ask about. Cal said it was staying. Grant's grip shifted. The machine tilted toward me. Careful, I said. We haven't decided, he told Rena. Mom stepped into the hall. It belongs to Nell. Grant closed his eyes briefly. Rena looked at me. Then it goes with Nell. I just liked it. It belonged to our grandmother, I said. I figured. She ran 2 fingers above the gold flowers without touching them. My mother had one almost exactly like it. Hers bit if you got careless. Grandma's did too. Machines from that period expected competence. Marcy said, That's why Grant never used it. Rena looked from Marcy to Grant, unsure whether she was allowed to laugh. Grant chose for her. Family friend. She came without a filter. I came with coffee, Marcy said. The filter was in the machine. Rena laughed then, softly. Grant laughed too because once someone else had decided a moment was funny, he was generous enough to participate. We moved the sewing machine into the guest room. Grant placed it too close to the edge of a rug, so I moved it against the wall. When I returned to the hall, he was standing between Rena and the locked room. "We're still in the middle of sorting," he said. "There's dust, some exposed plaster. I'd rather have it cleaned up before you go in. I don't mind dust. It's not really safe yet." That was the first honest thing he had told her, and he used it to conceal everything else. Rena leaned slightly to see around him. Cal said it was storage, mostly. Marcy was still inside beside Agnes, who was nobody's idea of a linen. Rena looked at me. "Were you using it as a workshop?" "My grandmother and I were, and there was water damage." Grant turned his head toward me. The warning in his expression was almost delicate. "Yes," I said. "How long ago?" 3 years. But the leak was fixed? The leak was stopped. The damaged framing and floor weren't fully repaired. Grant stepped in, which is why we're clearing it. We've already got calls out. Rena removed her phone from her coat pocket. "Can I see?" He could either move or physically block the woman buying the house. Grant moved. Rena stopped at the threshold. She did not gasp. She didn't cover her nose or say, "Oh," the way Mom had. She looked at the open wall, then down at the floor, then up at the ceiling. Her face became still and attentive. "Where should I step?" I showed her. Grant followed so closely he nearly stepped on the back of her boot. "This section is the main issue," he said, pointing at the wall as though he had discovered it during a routine inspection. "Some old water intrusion. Dry now. We can close this up before the walk-through." Rena crouched near the plywood. "Close it up how?" "New floor, drywall, trim. We'll make it right. You're replacing the joists? Reinforcing whatever needs it. Who's doing that? I'm getting bids." She looked at him. "You said you'd close the wall before you know what needs reinforcing. It's all part of the same job." "No," I said. "It isn't." Grant gave me a quick smile that contained no pleasure. Nell likes precision. I like floors. Rena stood. "So do I." Dad appeared in the doorway with Mom behind him. For a room everyone had ignored, it was attracting a crowd. Dad said, "This is typical in a house this age." Rena looked at the wall. "I've owned old houses. Typical still costs money." "Of course," Grant said, "and the offer reflects the age. The offer reflects what we saw. You're buying as is." Rena slipped her phone back into her pocket. "I'm fine buying damaged things as is. I don't like discovering the damage after I'm told a locked room contains linens." Grant's face colored. Mom stepped forward. There was confusion. Rena waited. Mom looked at me as if confusion was one of the dishes I should put away. I said, "The room was locked because my grandmother didn't want anyone going in after the floor was opened." Grant didn't know what was inside when he spoke to Cal. Grant turned fully toward me. "I knew it was storage. You knew the door was locked." "That's enough," Mom said. Rena didn't seem angry. That made Grant more nervous. Anger could be charmed, soothed, or dismissed as emotion. Calm attention was harder. "Did you know about the damage when you accepted our offer?" she asked Mom. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. "She received the estimates 3 years ago," I said. "I don't know what she remembered when she accepted." Mom stared at me. I had not raised my voice. I had not mentioned the money they gave Grant. I had answered exactly what Rena asked, and somehow that felt meaner than yelling. Rena nodded once. "All right, Rena," Grant said. "We're not trying to hide anything." Marcy made a noise that sounded like a cough wearing lipstick. Grant ignored her. "We had a lot happening. Funeral arrangements, cleaning, everybody moving in different directions. I came over this morning specifically to get access, after accepting the offer. Yes, but before closing." Rena looked around again. Her eyes paused on the cedar chest, then the wing-back chair, then the 3 upside-down dining chairs. Are these included? No, Grant said. Yes, Marcy said at the same time. He turned. You said they belong to people. They do. I'm answering why they're here, not who owns them. Rena smiled faintly. I'm going to let you all sort that out. We will, Grant said. The room will be empty. I don't need it empty. I need to know whether the repair changes our plans. It won't. It might. There was no accusation in her voice. She was stating the weather. She stepped carefully back into the hall and took out her phone. I'll ask Cal to come by with me. We'll bring someone who knows framing. No need to bother Cal until we have our own estimate, Grant said. He's buying the house with me. I try not to surprise him with missing walls. Grant smiled because he had nothing else available. Rena thanked Mom for letting her in. She thanked me for showing her where to step. At the stairs, she glanced into the guest room. I really do love that sewing machine, she said. But take it. Things should go where they were promised. Mom's chin trembled. It was almost imperceptible. After the front door closed, no one spoke until Rena's car started. Then Grant said, What the hell was that? Marcy walked past him. A buyer viewing a house. I thought you'd recognize the process. I'm talking to Nell, then use her name. I did. Use it without sounding like you're trying to return her to a store. Grant waited until Marcy was downstairs before he turned on me. You could have said the damage was contained, it's not repaired. Contained and repaired are different words. You told me I liked precision. I didn't ask you to perform surgery on every sentence. Mom stood with her back against the hall wall. Why did you tell her I had the estimates? Because she asked if you knew. I didn't remember. You remembered enough to tell me it cost too much. That was 3 years ago, Nell. Your grandmother was getting worse. We had a lot on our minds. So did I. Dad moved between us, though again nobody had moved toward anyone. The issue now is that the buyer thinks we concealed something. Grant said, Because Nell made it sound concealed. You told Cal the room contained linens after you opened it and saw a missing wall. I was buying us time. By lying. By not panicking him over a problem we can fix. Mom's voice became small. Can they lower the offer? Grant looked away too quickly. Dad noticed. Can they? They can ask, Grant said. That doesn't mean we agree, and if we don't, Mom asked, then we handle the repair before closing. In 9 working days, I said. Grant rounded on me. You really want this to fail. The accusation was so absurd I laughed, which made it sound true. I didn't know it existed until yesterday. You knew the room existed. You knew the damage existed. You had the only key. Grandma gave it to me. Right. Grandma gave you the key. Grandma told you everything. Grandma needed you. You gotta be the one person who knew what was happening, and now you're acting offended that we didn't consult you. For a moment, he looked less angry than hurt. Then he said, You enjoy being necessary, Nell. Don't pretend you don't. The words found a place I hadn't protected. Mom said, Grant, that's unfair. But she said it gently, the way she corrected him when he used the wrong fork. He looked at her. Is it? No one answered. I went into the guest room, wrapped the sewing machine's moving parts with the hall runner, and carried the removable wooden top downstairs. Marcy took one look at my face and didn't ask what happened. She helped me load the machine into my car. Grant came onto the porch while we were securing it with an old blanket. I need the contractors' names, he said. They're in my phone. Send them. I will. And the furniture list. When I get home. He leaned against the porch post. I'm not your enemy. No. Enemies usually know they're fighting you. At my apartment, Marcy and I wrestled the machine through the front door, scraping one knuckle and inventing several new uses for Grant's name. After we set it beside the living room wall, she pointed at Grandma's sewing basket. List. I opened it. Beneath the furniture names were Grandma's small handwritten notes about fabric, glue, and missing hardware. Near the bottom, one line had been underlined twice. Grant's cedar chest. New lid before his birthday. Don't let him see until it's beautiful. Marcy read it over my shoulder. Well, she said, that woman never did know when to give up on people. She knew exactly when, I said. She just kept choosing not to. Marcy sat on the arm of my sofa and examined her scraped knuckle. That too. I folded the paper along the crease Grandma had made. Do you think I enjoy being necessary? I think everybody enjoys being necessary. That isn't what he meant. No. He meant to hurt you. Successful mourning for him. Marcy took the list from me and flattened it on her knee. Your brother throws knives when he feels cornered. Sometimes they hit something true by accident. I looked at her. Don't give me that face. I liked you before you learned to make it. What true thing did he hit? You do like being the one Ruth trusted. She trusted me because I showed up. Yes. Grant didn't. Yes. Mom didn't. Yes. So what are we arguing about? We're not arguing. You're defending a job nobody asked you to keep applying for. I got up and carried our empty coffee cups into the kitchen. My apartment was small enough that leaving a conversation required creativity. I rinsed the cups longer than necessary. Marcy followed me halfway and leaned against the doorframe. Ruth loved you, she said. More honestly than most people know how to love anybody. She also used you. I shut off the water. She was 86. She was stubborn at 86. She was stubborn at 66. Age didn't invent that woman. She needed help, and you needed to be the person who didn't leave. I dried my hands on a dish towel. Did you come here to insult the dead? No, I insulted her while she was alive. I see no reason to lower my standards. Despite myself, I smiled. Marcy held out the furniture list. Send this to your brother, then call Gloria before he decides her chairs are rustic planters. I photographed both sides and sent them to Grant along with the contractors' names. He responded before the second message showed as delivered. Already called Wes. 6 weeks. Then, Miller won't quote without opening more floor. Then, third number disconnected. I typed, that's what I had 3 years ago and deleted it. Grant sent another message. Can you call Wes? He likes you. I put my phone face down. Marcy watched me. Aren't you going to answer? He asked me to call a contractor he already called. And if I call, Wes will still be booked 6 weeks out, but now Grant will believe I caused it personally. That does sound efficient. I called Gloria instead. She answered from Arizona with wind roaring over the phone and told me her 3 dining chairs were supposed to be ready whenever Ruth stopped socializing and started stapling. When I explained about the house, she went quiet. I knew she was sick, Gloria said. I didn't know she was that close. She didn't want people hovering. That sounds like her. I can store the chairs until you're back. You don't have room. I'll figure it out. Don't start inheriting her bad habits along with her sewing machine. Apparently, every woman over 70 had received the same briefing about me. By Friday evening, Grant had revived the family group chat he claimed was impossible to follow. He renamed it Ruth House Action Items and sent a list divided into categories. Clear room, contact owners, remove personal items, repair floor/wall, preserve sale. Each line had a checkbox emoji. Grant had discovered organization, and he wanted witnesses. Mom replied with 3 red hearts. Dad sent a thumbs up. I wrote, Gloria's chairs can't be picked up until April. I'll store them. Grant responded, Great. 30 seconds later, Where? I didn't answer. Saturday morning, the group filled with photographs. Dad carrying lumber, Mom standing beside a stack of boxes, Grant in work gloves holding a pry bar as if auditioning for a show called Men Who Recently Learned the Word Joist. At 10, he sent me a private message. We need you. I was drinking coffee at my kitchen table. The sewing machine stood beside the wall, still wrapped in Grandma's hall runner. My apartment looked like an antique shop that had suffered a minor collision. I replied, I said noon. He sent, Mom's upset. I wrote, Give her a bear claw. When I arrived, a dented white van sat behind Dad's car. The lettering on its side said, Everett Home Solutions, beneath a picture of a roof, a faucet, and a deck. Either Everett offered comprehensive services or had trouble committing. Inside, Mom was sorting the contents of Grandma's junk drawer into 6 bowls. One held batteries, one held keys, one held rubber bands. The other 3 appeared to be variations on trash. "I thought you were coming earlier," she said. I said noon. It's 12:15. Then I'm barely late. Grant has been here since 7. He'll want that carved into the wall. She pushed a bowl toward me. "Do you know what these keys open?" I looked at them. "No, I don't want to throw away anything important. They're probably for old padlocks, but probably isn't definitely." This was how she transferred decisions. She made uncertainty, then handed it to me. I pushed the bowl back. "Keep them." "For how long?" "Until you decide." Her mouth tightened. "You don't have to be hostile." "I'm not. I'm letting you choose." That tone is hostile. Grant came down the stairs wearing safety glasses on top of his head. "Finally. You're welcome." "For what?" "Whatever you were about to ask me to do." He pointed upward. "Everett thinks he can finish in 8 days." "Who's Everett?" A man appeared behind him carrying a cordless drill. He was around 50 with a red beard and the solemn expression of someone who had heard his business name used as a question before. "Ed Everett. Nell Avery. Grant says you opened the wall." "A contractor opened it." "I paid him." Ed nodded. "Good work, thank you." I watched. He smiled slightly. Grant did not. "What are you proposing?" I asked. "Pulling the plywood, checking the span, reinforcing what needs it. New subfloor, insulation, drywall, vinyl plank." "Laminate," Grant said. "Vinyl handles moisture better," Ed replied. "There won't be moisture. Then it'll handle the absence of moisture beautifully." I liked him more than I wanted to. "How much?" I asked. Grant said, "We're discussing that privately." Ed said, 14 to 18 depending on what's under the plywood." Grant turned. "You said 12. I said starting around 12. You didn't say around." I said probably. "You definitely said 12. Ed looked at me. "Families hear the lowest number. It's why I say 3. Dad came down carrying a 2x8 board. This lumber is crooked." "Wood's got personality," Ed said. "It has a bow." "Some personalities are difficult." Dad returned upstairs, unconvinced. Grant pulled me into the dining room. "If we can keep it under 15, we preserve the deal. You don't know that. Rena wants the room sound. We make it sound." "In 8 days?" "Ed has a crew. Did you tell him the buyers are bringing their own contractor?" His expression answered for him. "Tell him." "Why?" "Because if they want to inspect before the wall closes, we can take pictures. That isn't the same. I need you to stop saying no to every solution. I need you to stop calling concealment a solution." He lowered his voice. "Do you know what happens if they shave $30,000 off the offer? You get a smaller, fresh start. Mom gets less money. Mom already decided the money was yours. That isn't fair." I almost admired him for saying it. Before I could answer, the front door opened and a narrow man in a wool coat stepped inside holding a tin of cookies. "Nell?" he called. "Thomas." He hugged me with one arm and held out the cookies with the other. Thomas worked at the pharmacy Grandma used. His little walnut side table was upstairs with one stripped leg and a patch of old varnish still clinging to the top. "I brought this for your mother," he said, "and I brought blankets." "Blankets?" "For the table." Grant came in behind me. "You're picking up the small table?" "Yes, it needs work." "I know. It might not be worth taking." Tomas's expression didn't change. It was my wife's. Grant glanced at me. "Come on," I said to Thomas. "I'll show you." We found the table beneath Grandma's workbench. Its legs were delicate, turned wood with tiny carved leaves near the feet. Grant carried it downstairs while Thomas and I held the doors. At the front porch, Thomas ran his thumb across the unfinished top. "My wife spilled nail polish remover here," he said, touching a pale ring. "She thought I'd be angry. I told her it was a table, not a church." Grant shifted his grip. "After she died," Thomas continued, I decided every mark in the house was sacred. Ruth told me that was nonsense. She said my wife would haunt me if I turned bad housekeeping into a shrine. That sounds like her, I said. She offered to fix it, wouldn't take money. He smiled down at the table. Now I think maybe I'll leave the ring. Grant carried it all the way to Tomas's car and helped wrap each leg. When Tomas offered him the cookie tin, Grant took one cookie instead of pretending he didn't want any. Back upstairs, Ed had removed the plywood. 2 joists were dark at the ends, and one split ran farther than I remembered. Ed crouched beside it. This is more than 12. Grant stood over him. How much more? I won't know until I open the ceiling below or pull another row of floor. You said 14 to 18. I said families hear the lowest number, and you still found a way to hear a lower one. Dad blamed the old roof. Mom blamed the first contractor. Grant blamed the schedule. No one blamed the 3 years when the room sat behind a locked door because the family had preferred a restaurant rescue to an unphotogenic repair. I started carrying fabric boxes into the hall. Grant joined me without being asked. When we reached the cedar chest, he stopped. Was she really doing this for my birthday? I looked at the cracked lid. She wanted it ready last year. He rubbed his thumb over the pencil marks along the edge. Why didn't she tell me? She did. No, she didn't. She asked you to come upstairs. He stared at the chest. Then he said, I thought she wanted me to change a light bulb. You told her you were wearing good pants. The color rose slowly into his face. He bent, lifted one end of the chest, and said, Where do you want it? For the first time all day, he didn't sound like he was talking about the room. Your car, I said. Grant's mouth tightened. I can't put this in my car. The back seats fold down. It'll tear the leather, then carry it home. I'm staying with Mom and Dad. That was new. He had told everyone his apartment above the restaurant was a temporary convenience, an efficient arrangement while he wound down the business. Apparently temporary had ended. Mom, who had come up behind us, said, Only until he finds something. Grant gave her a look. I was going to tell Nell. Why? He looked at me. Because that's something siblings tell each other. So is selling Grandma's house. We can't have one conversation without you bringing that up. We haven't had a conversation since it happened where it wasn't relevant. He bent and took one end of the cedar chest. I took the other. Where are we actually putting it? He asked. The guest room, for now. Is that floor safe? Yes. You're sure? I was sure about this floor too, but apparently nobody reads my messages. He didn't answer. We carried the chest down the hall, passing Dad with another crooked board and Ed with a reciprocating saw. The chest was heavier than it looked. Grandma had stored old blankets inside before the lid broke, and I hadn't emptied all of them. Halfway through the guest room door, Grant's end dipped. What's in this thing? He asked. Blankets. Are they made of chain mail? Grandma's generation prepared for cold as if blankets were ammunition. We set it beneath the window. Grant opened the lid as far as the crack allowed. The familiar smell of cedar rose between us. Inside were 3 wool blankets, a faded quilt, and one of Grant's old sweatshirts. The sweatshirt had the name of his college across the front, the letters cracked with age. He picked it up. She still had this? She had everything. I thought Mom cleaned out my stuff years ago. Mom threw away what was at her house. Grandma rescued what you complained about losing afterward. He held the sweatshirt by the shoulders. I was skinny. You were 20. I looked sick. You looked like a lamp with hair. He laughed. Not his funeral hall laugh or his buyer on the phone laugh. It came out before he arranged it. For a second, the room felt ordinary. We were standing in sunlight, making fun of his old clothes, and Grandma was simply downstairs waiting for us to bring her tea. Then the saw started in the hall. Grant folded the sweatshirt and put it back in the chest. I'll take this eventually, he said. Eventually is how Grandma ended up storing it for 26 years. I said I'll take it. I went back to the locked room. Ed had removed a longer strip of floor near the north wall. The dark ends of the joists disappeared beneath the framing, and one crumbled slightly when he pressed it with a screwdriver. That's not ideal, he said. Grant came in behind me. What is not ideal cost? I need to see the sill from below. Can you see enough from here? I can see enough to know I need to see more. What's below us? The dining room, I said. Grant stared at the floor. The buyers are keeping that ceiling. Ed looked at him. Most buyers keep ceilings. I mean, it's original plaster. Then you should have repaired the leak 3 years ago. Dad, from the hall, said, "We don't need commentary." Ed stood and wiped his screwdriver on a rag. Commentary's free. The repair isn't. He wanted to make a small inspection opening near the dining room wall. Grant objected to the dust. Dad objected to the size. Mom objected to doing it before lunch. I found Grandma's plastic drop cloths and covered the oak table. Grant watched me tape the edges. "See?" he said. "This is what I mean." "What?" "You say you won't help, but you can't stand there and watch something be done wrong. I'm protecting the table. You're managing the room. I'm putting down plastic. You've already told Ed where the leak traveled, which boards were removed, what the first contractor said. Would you prefer he guess?" "I prefer you admit you're involved." I tore the tape with my teeth. "Fine, I'm involved in keeping plaster dust off furniture you promised to strangers." He smiled without humor. Progress. Ed cut the opening. The first piece of plaster fell onto the drop cloth with a heavy slap. Gray dust rolled out, carrying the dry mineral smell of an old house being wounded. Mom left the room. Dad stood beside Ed with his arms folded, offering advice through a dust mask he had put on upside down. When Ed aimed a flashlight into the opening, his expression changed. Grant saw it. "What?" Ed did not answer immediately. He moved the light, then reached 2 fingers into the gap. "The sill's softer than I hoped." "How soft?" "I can push into it." "Don't." Ed looked at him. "Not pushing doesn't make it harder. Can you reinforce it?" "Probably. But I'm not closing that upstairs wall in 8 days. You said you could finish. I said I might finish, depending on what was under the plywood. What if we reinforce what we can reach, photograph it, close the wall, then come back after the sale?" My head came up. Ed stared at Grant for a second. "You want me to conceal an unfinished repair so you can finish it after somebody else owns the house?" "I didn't say conceal. You said close the wall, with access marked." "On what? A treasure map?" Dad removed his mask. "Nobody is asking you to do anything improper." Ed packed his drill into its case. "Good. Then this is easy. I'll write up what I saw and give you a revised estimate. Earliest I can start is Thursday. Minimum 2 weeks if the lumber comes in on time." Grant's voice sharpened. "The walkthrough is Monday. Then the wall's going to look like a wall on Monday, just not the kind you wanted." He left through the front door carrying his tools. The white van backed out past the sold sign and disappeared. Grant stood in the dining room beneath the new hole in the ceiling. "Unbelievable," he said. "He was honest," I replied. "He was looking for reasons to raise the price. He found rotten wood. It wasn't hiding very hard." Mom returned holding a roll of paper towels. "How much more?" "He'll send a number," Grant said. "How much do you think?" "I don't know, Mom." She looked at me. "I don't know either. But you know these things." "No. I know when somebody's asking me to say a smaller number." She pressed the paper towels to her chest. "I can't lose this house and your brother's future in the same week." Grant looked away. The sentence sat between us so naked that even Mom seemed startled by it. "His future?" I asked. "I mean, the money would help him get settled." "What about your future? Your father and I are fine. And mine?" "You're fine too." Grant said, "Don't make her rank us." She already did. I went into the kitchen because I could not breathe in the dining room without tasting plaster. 3 cardboard boxes had appeared beside the back door. "Donate" was written across each one in Grant's handwriting. The top box held Grandma's yellow colander, her chipped ceramic bird, 4 dish towels, and the green glass peppermint bowl. I lifted the bird. It had a narrow beak, one painted eye higher than the other, and a round body that made flight seem unlikely. Grandma had bought it at a church sale and spent 20 years correcting anyone who called it a duck. Mom came in behind me. "I thought you didn't want much." she said. "I didn't know I had to submit a list before the funeral. That's not what I meant. Why is this being donated? It's chipped. It was always chipped. I've never liked it. It isn't yours." Mom's face changed. The house was hers. The contents, unless promised or owned by someone else, were hers. That was the practical truth, and I had just spoken to her as though she were stealing. I set the bird on the counter. "Sorry," I said. She blinked. An apology was not what she had prepared to defend against. "I know you're hurting," she said. "So are you." She sat at the kitchen table. That was when I noticed it was the only table left in the room. "Where's the breakfast table?" Mom looked toward the back door. I went outside. Grandma's small chrome-legged table stood at the curb beside 2 trash bags. One side of its yellow top was sun-faded from years beneath the window. The matching chairs were upside down on it. Grant was in the driveway talking on his phone. I walked over and ended his call with my finger. "What the hell? You put Grandma's table at the curb. The Hendersons don't want it. They're keeping the oak table. This was the table she used every day. And you didn't ask anyone. I put it in the group. You wrote, 'Remove excess kitchen furniture.' That's what this is. To you." He glanced at the curb. "Do you want it?" "I don't have room." "Then why are we fighting?" Because wanting something and having somewhere to keep it had never been the same question in that house. A pickup slowed at the curb. The driver looked at the table. "Don't," I said. Grant waved him on. The pickup continued. "Now you're guarding furniture you don't want," Grant said. "I don't want it thrown away. It isn't being thrown away. Someone will take it." "Then let someone in the family decide. You keep saying family when you mean you." That one hit too. Mom came outside and wrapped her arms around herself. "I used to hate that table," she said. Grant and I both looked at her. Mom bought it after she and Dad had their first real fight about money. She went to Sears and bought it without asking him. He didn't speak to her for 3 days. She touched the faded yellow edge. Every time I ate breakfast here, I thought about how furious he must have been. I had never heard that story. "Why didn't Grandma tell me?" I asked. "She told me because I was angry at your father." Mom smiled faintly. She said sometimes a table is cheaper than surrender. Grant looked down at the chrome legs. "So are we keeping it?" Mom shook her head. "No, I still hate it." I laughed. Mom did too. Even Grant smiled. We moved the table back into the kitchen until someone could claim it properly. Mom stayed beside me as I removed the ceramic bird and green bowl from the donation box. "You make me feel like I wasn't here," she said quietly. I looked at her. With Mom, she continued. "You know all the stories. You knew which cup, which blanket, which medicine. Every time I came, she asked where you were. That wasn't my fault, I know. You could have come more." Her mouth tightened. "And there it is." "What?" "The part where being closer to her made you better than me." "I didn't say that. You don't have to." She took the yellow colander from the box and placed it beside my bowl. "I loved her too, Nell. I know. Sometimes I stayed away because the 2 of you made me feel like a guest. There were 100 answers I could have given. Most were true. None would have helped." Her phone rang before I chose one. Grant's name appeared on the screen even though he was 30 feet away in the driveway. Mom answered and put him on speaker. "Rena moved the contractor visit up," he said. "To when?" Mom asked. A car door closed outside. Grant looked toward the street. "Now." Grant ended the call and opened the front door before the bell rang. Rena stood on the porch with a tall man in a canvas jacket and a woman carrying a tool bag. The man's expression was friendly enough to make Grant straighten his shoulders. "Cal," Grant said, offering his hand. "Good to finally meet in person." Cal shook it. Wish it were under less dusty circumstances. Grant laughed as if Cal had told a joke. Old houses like to keep things interesting. The woman beside them introduced herself as Simone. She had dark hair pulled into a low knot, work boots, and a flashlight clipped to her belt. She did not shake Grant's hand because hers were already occupied by a moisture meter and a tablet. "I'm not doing a formal inspection," she said. Rena asked me to look at the framing and give a rough scope. Absolutely, Grant replied. We've got our contractor working on the same thing. Our former contractor, I said. Grant's eyes cut toward me. Simone looked between us. Former because? Scheduling, Grant said. He wouldn't close the wall before the structure was repaired, I said. Mom whispered my name. Rena took off her coat. Can we start upstairs? Grant led them up. He moved fast enough to reach the locked room first, like he could rearrange it before they arrived. Simone entered carefully, checked the ceiling, then crouched beside the open floor. She tapped the end of one joist with a screwdriver. Cal stayed near the doorway. That doesn't look like linens. Rena said, I mentioned that. Grant placed both hands on his hips. The upside is everything's exposed. No surprises once the repair starts. Simone looked up. There are always surprises once a repair starts. Sure, but major surprises. There are usually those too. I liked her immediately, which felt disloyal to nobody in particular. She shone her flashlight along the sill plate. How long was the leak active? I don't know, I said. We found it 3 years ago. It could have been slow for years before that. Who did the demolition? Harlan Construction. She nodded. They do clean work. Grant seized on that. Exactly. This was professionally stabilized. Simone pressed the moisture meter against the dark wood. It's dry. Great. Dry rot is often dry. Grant's smile remained in place, but only because he had forgotten how to remove it. Simone asked me where the water entered, what section of roof had been repaired, and whether the original contractor had seen the framing below. I answered. Grant moved closer with every question until he was practically standing inside my coat. Rena pointed toward the floor. Would you replace all of this? Not all, Simone said. I'd pull back another 2 feet, expose the full ends, and see where the sound wood begins. At least 3 joists need attention, possibly 4. The sill section needs replacement or a properly engineered repair. Dad said, You could sister the joists. Simone glanced at him. Potentially. Dad folded his arms, vindicated. But sistering onto deteriorated bearing points doesn't solve the bearing problem. He unfolded them. Cal stepped farther into the room. What are we talking? A week? Not if you want it done correctly. 2? Maybe 3. More if the sill damage runs behind that corner. Grant said. Our contractor thought 8 days. Your former contractor, Rena reminded him. He only left because we disagreed on approach. Simone asked. What approach did you want? I stared at the workbench so I would not be the one to answer. Grant said, We were discussing sequencing. That usually means somebody wanted drywall early, Simone said. Marcy, who had been quiet near the fabric cabinet, made the lipstick cough again. Cal glanced at her. I'm sorry, who are you? Marcy. I'm here for Agnes. He looked alarmed. My chair, she explained. Oh, she's prettier with fabric. Cal nodded as if that was a reasonable detail in a room where very few details were reasonable. Simone took measurements. Rena photographed the exposed wall and floor. Grant narrated each photograph, explaining what she was seeing while Simone was 3 feet away, seeing it more accurately. I carried Gloria's chairs into the guest room to clear space. When I returned, Cal was looking at the cedar chest. That's nice, he said. It isn't included, Grant replied quickly. I looked at him. He touched the damaged lid. It was mine. Still is, I said. His hand rested there a second longer. Simone went downstairs to examine the dining room opening. We followed in a line, 6 adults moving through the house like a tour nobody had purchased. She stood beneath the hole, aimed her flashlight upward, and frowned. Can I enlarge this? Grant answered before Mom could. How much? 6 inches. I mean, does it have to be enlarged? If you want me to see the connection, you can't use a camera? I can put a camera in there and take a picture of whatever direction it happens to face, or I can make the hole 6 inches wider and look. Mom said, Make the hole. Grant turned. Mom, it's my ceiling. The words surprised all of us, including her. Simone spread the drop cloth and widened the opening. Plaster dust fell across the plastic. Cal helped me hold one edge closed so it wouldn't drift onto the table. "This is a beautiful piece," he said, nodding at the oak. "My grandmother bought it used in 1968. We'd keep it if that's still all right. That's up to my mother." He studied my face, then let go of the plastic. "Rena told me about the sewing machine. I'm sorry for the confusion. Thank you." Grant had it in the photo packet. Of course he did. It was promised to me before the house was for sale. I understand. Rena's already found 3 others online. From the kitchen came Rena's voice. "None of which I'm buying until we know what this wall costs." Cal smiled. She can hear a bad purchase from 2 rooms away. There was affection in it, not complaint. Simone finished with the ceiling and wiped her hands. The damaged sill runs farther than the upstairs opening shows. Maybe 5 feet. The framing can be repaired, but you're opening more wall and ceiling than you think, Grant asked. "Rough number?" She hesitated. "Just a range. 28 to 35,000, assuming no electrical or additional roof work. That includes putting the dining room ceiling and upstairs finishes back." The plastic drop cloth crackled as Dad shifted his weight. "That's ridiculous," he said. Simone shrugged. "Get other bids. We had one for 22. 3 years ago," I said. Grant looked at me like I had personally invented inflation. Simone packed her flashlight. 22 3 years ago sounds consistent." Cal rubbed his chin. "And 3 weeks? Best case." Rena and Cal looked at each other. They did not speak, but an entire conversation passed between them without requiring anyone else to organize it. Grant stepped closer. "The closing date is flexible." Rena said, "Not very. We can work something out." "Possibly. The house is still a great value. You're getting original woodwork, a large lot. All the major systems are functional. I know what we're buying," Cal said. His friendliness remained, but it had stopped being available to Grant. Rena put on her coat. "We need to talk privately." "Of course. Take your time. We'll call tomorrow." "No rush," Grant said, though everything about him said rush. At the front door, Cal paused beside the kitchen. Grandma's yellow table had been returned to its usual place. "That's staying?" he asked. Mom looked at it. "Do you like it?" "It has character. It has a grudge," she said. "But you can keep it." Cal laughed. "I'll take my chances." After their cars pulled away, Grant closed the door and stayed with his hand on the knob. Dad spoke first. 35,000 is inflated. Mom sat at the yellow table she had just given away. "What happens now?" "We wait for their call," Grant said. "And if they lower the offer?" "We negotiate. How much room do we have?" Grant did not answer. I leaned against the counter. "What was their offer?" He looked at Mom. "It was fair," she said. "That isn't a number, Dad told me. It was less than I expected, even for an off-market sale. Not insulting, but low enough that the included furniture and quick closing had clearly mattered." "You said it was a great deal," I told Grant. "It is, after you remove commissions, carrying costs, cleanup." "There were no commissions. That's part of my point." "How much did you think would be left for you?" Mom said. "Nell, stop. No. Everybody keeps talking about preserving the sale, but what we're preserving is his share." "It's not a share," Grant said. "Mom offered to help." "With what?" His face hardened. "Getting back on my feet." "You're on your feet. You know what I mean." "Actually, I don't. You lost the restaurant. You moved into Mom and Dad's house. What exactly are they buying you?" Silence. Grant took off the safety glasses and placed them on the counter. "A deposit on an apartment," he said. "A few months so I can breathe. Enough to close out some business expenses without spending the next 5 years getting calls." Mom looked miserable. I said, "How much?" "That's none of your business. You sold a house full of my grandmother's things to fund it." "Our grandmother." "Then why am I hearing the details after the buyer?" He laughed once bitterly. "Because you do this. Every decision becomes a trial, and you're the only person who gets to be the injured party. I didn't ask to be involved. You always say that while standing in the center of everything." Mom stood. "Grant, no." She gets to say whatever she wants because she helped Grandma. We all understand. Nell did the appointments. Nell fixed the roof. Nell knew the coffee. Nell knew the chair. Nell knew the special bird was a damn wren. It is a wren, Mom said automatically. Grant looked at her. Mom's hand went to her mouth, and Marcy turned away to hide a smile. Then Grant's anger collapsed so quickly it left him looking tired. I didn't come upstairs, he said. Fine. I should have come upstairs. Is that what everyone needs me to say? Nobody answered. He looked at me. You think I didn't know she was disappointed in me? I didn't say that. I'd sit with her, and she'd ask about the restaurant in that voice. What voice? The one where every question had a better answer hidden behind it. I knew the voice. Grandma used it when she wanted me to rest, date, travel, spend money on myself, or stop pretending I wasn't angry. Love had not made her easy. Grant rubbed both hands over his face. I stopped going upstairs because she always had something for me to fix, he said. A bulb, a window, that chest. And every time I saw something I hadn't done, it was one more thing. So you did none of them. Yes, Nell. He looked at me, eyes bright with fury or embarrassment. That is how failing works. Mom stepped toward him. He moved away before she could comfort him. My phone buzzed. So did his. Rena had sent the same message to both of us, probably because she no longer trusted information to travel through Grant. Cal and I still want the house. We're requesting a revised purchase price reflecting Simone's high estimate, plus $5,000 for schedule and finish uncertainty. We'll send the amendment tonight. Grant read it twice. $40,000, Mom said when he told her. Dad swore under his breath. Grant stared toward the ceiling directly beneath the room he had never seen. Then Mom asked, very softly, "How much would that leave for you?" He looked at her. "Nothing," he said. The word seemed to empty the room. Mom looked at Grant as if he had announced an illness. Dad pulled out one of the yellow chairs and sat. Its vinyl seat exhaled beneath him. "Nothing?" Mom repeated. "Not literally nothing. You just said nothing. I mean, nothing useful." "How much is useful?" I asked. Grant shot me a look. "Can we not?" "Apparently we can't. The room costs $40,000 and the sale only works if you get whatever is left. Those numbers are the whole conversation." Dad pointed at me. "The sale also pays your grandmother's final expenses. Those come first. I know. It covers taxes and maintenance. I know, and your mother is entitled to something from her own inheritance." "I know, Dad." He lowered his hand, irritated that I had agreed too efficiently. Grant paced into the dining room and back. "We reject the amendment." Mom looked at him. "Then what?" "We fix the room." "With what money?" Dad asked. "We find another contractor. Another contractor still wants money. Then we relist," I said. "With a missing wall and a hole in the dining room ceiling? We finish enough to photograph. Here we are again." He stopped pacing. "Do you have an idea that isn't no?" "Yes, except that the house is worth less than you promised." His expression hardened. Mom rubbed both hands over the tabletop. "Could we tell Cal and Rena we'll split the difference?" "Maybe," Grant said. "They want the house. Then offer 20. They'll counter. Good. That's what negotiating is." She looked almost hopeful. Grant did not tell her that negotiation worked best when the other side had not just watched you discover your own wall. Dad stood and went to the counter, where Simone had left a small pile of plastered dust despite the plastic. "We should get 2 more estimates," he said. "Real estimates, not these scare numbers." "Simone wasn't charging us," I replied. "Exactly. She works for them. She works for herself. She gave a range." Dad brushed the dust into his palm. "Everybody has an angle." Marcy, from the doorway, said, "Yours appears to be avoiding a broom." He went to find one. Grant opened Rena's message again. "They said they'll send the amendment tonight. We have time." "How much?" Mom asked. "Usually a couple days. That isn't time. That's a countdown." He slipped his phone into his pocket. "I'll handle it." My mother's face changed at those words. I had seen that change before, not doubt exactly, but the effort required to suppress it. "I think we've seen what that means," she said. Grant went still. Mom seemed startled by herself for the second time that afternoon. "I didn't mean, yes, you did. I mean, you moved quickly, and maybe too quickly, but you were trying to help. There it is." "What?" "The correction. God forbid we leave a criticism of me standing for 10 seconds. He took his keys from the counter. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To find someone who wants a job." "Grant." He kept walking. She followed him onto the porch. Through the screen, I heard her say his name twice before his car door slammed. Dad returned with a broom and looked around. "Where'd he go?" Marcy took the broom from him. "To find a contractor who accepts compliments as a deposit." Mom came back inside, wiping beneath her eyes. "He's under a lot of pressure," she said. No one had put him under it. Grant had built the pressure himself, room by room, promise by promise, then handed us each a share. I carried the green bowl, yellow colander, and ceramic wren to my car. Mom watched from the porch but did not object. Marcy claimed Agnes needed more wrapping than we had, so she left the chair upstairs and made me promise not to let Grant solve it. By the time I reached my apartment, the family group had 3 messages from him. "Anyone know a framing guy?" Then, "Seriously." Then, 7 minutes later, "Forget it." I put Grandma's bowl on my kitchen counter. Without peppermints, it looked smaller. The amendment arrived during dinner. Grant forwarded the document to the group, followed by his own summary. Reduction $40,000. Furniture listed in original offer remains except sewing machine and third-party pieces. Closing date unchanged. Response due Monday, 5 p.m. Mom replied, "Let's discuss tomorrow as a family." I didn't answer. Her call came less than a minute later. "Did you see it?" "Yes, we're having dinner tomorrow. I have food here, at our house." That wasn't my concern. "Nell, please. I need one meal where everybody sits down and talks like adults." What was today? Dusty. I heard Dad in the background asking whether she had mentioned 6 o'clock. 6, Mom said, "and don't bring anything." That meant bring patience. The dining table at my parents' house had 6 chairs, though there had been only 4 of us. Mom kept the 2 extra place settings pushed against the wall and used them to hold unopened mail. When I arrived, she had cleared both chairs and lit candles. Grant was already there, sitting with a glass of iced tea. He had changed out of his work clothes. There was a small cut along his jaw where he had apparently shaved too fast. "Find a contractor?" I asked. 3. "That's good. 2 can come next month. One said he can start this week if we pay double and don't ask for references." Promising. He had 1 reference. His mother? Ex-wife. I took the chair across from him. Mom had made pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, and an apple crisp. She cooked like weather was coming. Dad carved the roast into slices so thick they had corners. For 10 minutes, no one discussed the house. Mom asked about my job. Dad told a story about a man at the hardware store who returned a used hose. Grant complimented the potatoes twice. Then Mom set down her fork. "Nell, how much do you have saved?" The bite in my mouth turned to paste. "For what?" "Your townhouse." Grant leaned back. "Mom." "What?" "We're talking." "No, you're counting her money." Dad folded his napkin beside his plate. "Nobody is counting anything. We're looking at options. My savings aren't an option." Mom's voice stayed gentle. "You haven't heard what we're asking. You asked how much I have. Because the repair is temporary. If we fix the room, the Hendersons pay the original price. You would be repaid at closing. Assuming the work finishes on time, we could extend closing, assuming they agree." "We'd put it in writing," Dad said, as if paper transformed our family into reliable people. Grant stared at his plate. Mom reached across the table but stopped before touching me. "You said yourself that the room should have been fixed 3 years ago." "Yes, and you wanted it fixed for your grandmother." "Yes, so this could be your way of finishing it for her." There it was. They had dressed Grant in Grandma's clothes and expected me not to notice the fit. When Grandma was alive and water was coming through the ceiling, you said the repair cost too much. We didn't understand how serious it was. I sent pictures. We were overwhelmed. You gave Grant $18,000. Grant's head lifted. Mom's mouth tightened. That was a separate situation. It was the same month. The restaurant had employees depending on it. The employees had left within 6 weeks. Grandma stayed in the house. Dad said, "This isn't about old grievances. It's the exact same grievance. The wall has just been open long enough for everybody else to see it." Mom's voice trembled. "Why do you always assume the worst of us?" "I don't. I assumed you wouldn't ask me for my down payment. I was wrong. We aren't asking you to give it away. You're asking me to risk the money that gets me my own house so Grant can receive money from Grandma's." Grant put down his fork. "Stop saying it like that. How should I say it? Like I'm sitting here. You are sitting there. I know this is humiliating." The honesty of it quieted me. He rubbed the cut on his jaw. "I know how it looks. Do you?" "Yes," Mom said. "Nobody should be humiliated. Families help each other." Grant turned to her. "Don't. I'm only saying." She said no. Mom stared at him. He continued. "You asked." She answered. "Stop." For one breath, gratitude rose in me. Then he added, "I don't want her money if she's going to remind me about it until we die." The gratitude sat back down. "I wouldn't remind you," I said. He looked skeptical. "I'd have to be speaking to you." Dad pushed his chair away from the table. "This is exactly what your mother was trying to avoid." "No," Grant said. "Mom was trying to avoid losing the money. She's trying to protect you. I'm 43 years old. You're going through a difficult season. It's been a long season, Dad." Mom began collecting plates even though half of us were still eating. I stood and took mine to the sink. She said, "You don't have to leave. I'm helping. I can clear my own table." "Good." The word came out too hard. Mom set down the stack. "You think I did nothing for my mother?" she said. "I think you did what you could tolerate." Her face drained. Grant whispered, "Nell, I should have stopped. I didn't. You called every night because calls ended when you wanted. You handled insurance until it became difficult. You visited when the house was clean and Grandma was dressed. Then you told yourself, 'I like doing the rest.'" Mom gripped the edge of the counter. "And you did like it," she said. "Not all of it. But you liked being chosen. The same blade Grant had thrown, now in her hand. I was chosen because I came. You came because she chose you." We stared at each other. Dad said, "Enough." Mom's eyes filled, but her voice did not break. "You have no idea what it was like to walk into that house and have my own mother ask when you were coming. I didn't make her do that. No, you just answered every time. That hurt because there was no clean defense. Grandma had needed me. I had loved being needed by someone who noticed what I did. Both things could be true without canceling each other." Mom looked toward the dining room, where Grant sat with his head lowered. "I have spent my entire life between the two of you," she said. "One who needs everything and one who insists she needs nothing." I dried my hands. "I need my savings." She closed her eyes. "I will not spend the money that gets me a room of my own repairing the room all of you chose not to see." Dad came into the kitchen. "Then don't expect anything from the sale." The room went quiet. I looked at him. When did I ever? He had no answer. Grant stood at the dining table, gathered the unsigned amendment, and folded it once. "Accept the lower price," he said. Mom turned toward him. "What about you?" He looked at me, then at the paper in his hands. "For once," he said, "nothing." Mom shook her head. "No." Grant gave a tired laugh. "You asked what happens to me. That's what happens. I am not letting you walk away with nothing. It isn't your decision anymore. It is literally my decision. It's my house." "Then stop pretending this is for Grandma." Dad came back into the dining room. "You don't get to punish yourself because your sister refused to help." Grant looked at him. "She didn't refuse to help. She refused to pay. What's the difference when the result is the same? The difference is, it's her money. I had spent years waiting for him to say something like that. When it finally came, I didn't know whether to trust it or check the room for a trap. Mom sank into a dining chair. "We can find another buyer." "You want to start over?" Grant asked. "Clean the whole house, fix the ceiling, disclose the room, pay utilities while it sits? Rena and Cal still want it. Take the offer. You need an apartment. I need a lot of things." "We promised." "No, you promised." I planned around it because that's what I do. He picked up his iced tea, realized it was empty, and put it back down. "I make something possible in my head," he continued. "Then I start spending it before it exists." Mom looked wounded, though he was criticizing himself. Dad said, "There's no reason to get dramatic. I sold Grandma's house without opening a door. I think dramatic already got here." I reached for my coat. Mom looked at me. "You're leaving? You said we needed to talk. We talked. We haven't decided. You own the house. I want us to decide as a family. Then you want agreement, not advice." Her face hardened. "Go if that's what you want. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted her to stop me with the right words. I wanted Grant to explain the past week in a way that made him careless, but not selfish. I wanted Dad to apologize without first building a case against the need. I wanted Grandma's phone to ring in my pocket so I could leave for a reason everyone respected. I put on my coat. Grant followed me to the front porch. Cold air had settled over the street. Someone nearby was burning leaves, even though the city had sent 3 separate notices telling people not to. The smell followed us down the steps. Nell. I turned. He shoved his hands into his pockets. I meant what I said. Which part? Accepting the offer. That's Mom's choice. You know she won't do it unless she thinks we've both forgiven her first. For what? Everything. Nothing. Whichever one she can survive. I looked through the dining room window. Mom remained at the table staring at the folded amendment. Dad stood behind her with one hand on the chair. "I'm not forgiving her on command," I said. "I didn't ask you to." "What are you asking?" "Don't lend them the money tomorrow after making all of us do this tonight." "I'm not going to." He nodded. "You really thought I would? You always come back after the no." "That was true often enough to make me angry." "Not this time." "Good." There was no sarcasm in it. Mom waited until 40 minutes before the response deadline, then signed the amendment. The family group remained silent for several minutes after Grant posted the news. No hearts, no thumbs up. Dad eventually wrote, "Probably for the best," which was how he described decisions once he could no longer change them. Rena replied to all of us with a short thank you and a list of items she and Cal expected to remain. The oak dining table and chairs, the buffet, the living room sofa, 2 bedroom sets, the hallway mirror, and the yellow kitchen table. Mom reacted to that final item with a grimacing face. I almost called her. Instead, I put the phone down. The sale was moving forward with the room open and unfinished. Rena and Cal would handle the repair after closing. Everything belonging to someone else had to be removed, along with whatever personal objects we wanted. The closing date stayed where it was, leaving 8 days to empty 57 years without confusing memory and ownership. Mom immediately texted me a proposed schedule. Wednesday, kitchen and dining room. Thursday, bedroom linens and clothing. Friday, garage. Saturday/Sunday, all remaining items. She ended with, "Nell, please coordinate pickups with everyone." I wrote, "Grant has the furniture list." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and appeared again. "But you know the people," I replied. "Grant knows how to use a phone. He called me." "You could have just texted back, 'Yes,'" he said. "I could have coordinated the pickups too. Mom's going to call me now." That's how phones work. Gloria's chairs are the problem. She can't get them until April. I offered to store them. "In your apartment?" I hadn't worked that out. Mom and Dad have space in their garage. Dad won't like that. I didn't ask him. I sat straighter. "You're taking them? I'm arranging it. Don't make a parade. Do you need Gloria's number?" I already called her. That surprised me enough that I didn't speak. She likes me, he added. She's in Arizona. The distance helped. She said Grandma used to brag about my restaurant. Grandma bragged about all of us to other people. It was how she laundered disappointment. He was quiet. Then he said, I'll handle the pickups, okay? And I'm not asking for applause. I said, okay. You said it like you were handing me a certificate. I'm hanging up now. Okay. He said it exactly the way I had, and I laughed before I could stop myself. The house changed faster once everyone accepted that it was leaving us. Boxes appeared along the walls. The sympathy cards came down from the mantel. Mom wrapped the green glass candy dish before remembering I had already taken it, then called to ask whether I had accidentally taken a different green dish. Dad removed hooks from the garage and left tiny pale circles where the walls had been protected from dust. Grant made labels. He bought matching black markers and 3 colors of tape. Blue meant family, red meant buyer, yellow meant donation. By Thursday, objects all over the house looked like they were running for office. I went after work to pack my tools. The locked room was almost empty. Agnes waited near the door for Marcy's nephew, who was 48 and apparently owned a truck only when Marcy required one. Gloria's chairs had been moved to Dad's garage. The fabric cabinet stood open, its shelves bare except for scraps and loose thread. My workbench remained beneath the window. Grant was sitting on it with a cardboard box beside him. You shouldn't sit there, I said. One leg's loose. He stood immediately. Why is everything in this room dangerous? Because you never fixed any of it. Fair. I opened the first toolbox and checked its contents. Half my clamps were missing. Where are the red clamps? Dining room. Dad used them on the ceiling plastic. They're woodworking clamps. He believed in them. Grant picked up the cardboard box. I found this downstairs. It contained Grandma's calendars from the final 2 years, 3 unopened packages of incontinence pads, medication printouts, and a stack of greeting cards tied with kitchen string. Mom said you'd know what to keep. Mom knows what calendars are. She said there might be medical information. Grandma's dead. Her dentist can stop sending reminders. He set the box on the workbench. The top calendar had fallen open to last February. My handwriting covered most of the page. Cardiology, pickup refill, shower, call roof guy, groceries, foot doctor. Each appointment had an N beside it because Grandma had liked to know who was coming. There were a few Ds for Diane, mostly beside phone calls. 1 P beside gutter cleaning. Grant's name appeared once in Grandma's handwriting, followed by a question mark. Sunday dinner, Grant? He picked up the calendar. Were you here every day? No, it looks like every day. Some of those were reminders. For you. Yes. He turned several pages. My name continued in the margins. I thought the home care woman did most of this. She came 12 hours a week. Mom said she came every day. She came 3 days. But Mom said Mom needed you to believe things were handled. You needed to believe her. He lowered the calendar. Why didn't you tell me? I did. His jaw tightened. I called when Grandma fell in the bathroom. I said, you said you were covering dinner service. I texted when the insurance cut her hours. You sent a thumbs up. I asked you to take her to cardiology, and you said mornings were impossible. They were. They were impossible for me, too. I didn't know it was all this. I pointed to the calendar. That isn't secret ink. He sat on the wing of the workbench again, then remembered the loose leg and stood. From the box, he lifted the bundle of greeting cards. They were all from him. Some had been mailed. Others had been handed to Mom to deliver. Grandma had opened every envelope carefully with a butter knife, then returned the cards to their envelopes for safekeeping. Grant pulled out one with a sailboat on the front. Inside, he had written, Happy birthday, Grandma. Dinner on me soon. Love, G. What year? He asked. Check the postmark. 2 years ago. He stared at the sentence. Did I take her to dinner? No. I might have. You didn't. How do you know? Because she waited. His face folded slightly, not enough to become crying. She never said anything. She asked when you were coming. That's not the same as saying I forgot. Maybe she wanted you to come without being prosecuted." He returned the card to its envelope. "I was drowning at the restaurant," he said. "I know. No, you don't. You're right. I don't. You didn't tell me." He looked at me. For once, neither of us had a better answer hidden behind the question. I packed my chisels, mallets, glue bottles, and the fabric shears Grandma forbade anyone else to touch. Grant found the missing clamps downstairs and wiped plaster dust from them before returning them to the box. When I lifted the toolbox, he took the heavier side without asking. At my car, he placed it carefully in the trunk. "Marcy's chair gets picked up tomorrow," he said. "Gloria's are at Mom's. Thomas has his table. There's a footstool with a tag that says Lorraine, but nobody knows Lorraine. Lorraine Booker. She sings alto at Grandma's church. Do you have her number?" "No." He nodded. "I'll find it." I closed the trunk. "Grant." "What?" "Thank you." He looked uncomfortable. "Don't. You wanted me to say nothing? I wanted you not to sound surprised. I am surprised." "That's worse." He started back toward the house. On the porch, he stopped. "I found someone who might hire me," he said without turning around. "Regional supply sales, boring, salary, benefits. That sounds terrible." "It does." "When's the interview?" "Monday." "Wear good pants." He looked back at me. Then he laughed, once, and went inside. Before I reached the end of the block, Mom called. "Did Grant say anything to you?" "About what?" "The job interview. He mentioned it. He hasn't interviewed for a job in 12 years. He owned a restaurant." "That's different. Nobody decides whether they want you. Customers did that every night." "You know what I mean. I did." Grant had built his adult life around situations where he could call himself the boss, even when he was also the dishwasher, landlord negotiator, emergency cook, and person scraping gum from beneath table 6. A salary meant somebody else could tell him when to arrive. Benefits meant planning to remain. "Did he ask you to help him prepare?" Mom asked. "No. Maybe you could call and offer. He knows my number. It might be hard for him to ask. Then it will be good practice." She exhaled. "You've become very rigid. I'm driving. That isn't what I meant." "I know. We still have the bedroom tomorrow. Can you be there by 9? "No. I'm going at noon to get Grandma's photo albums. We need help with her clothes." "What do you need me to do? Tell me what to keep." "Keep what you want." That's not helpful. It's a decision. You're allowed to make one without me. Her silence lasted long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. "You sound just like her," she said. "Grandma?" "When she was angry." "I thought you said I made her angry." "I said you made me feel like a guest. You said a lot of things. So did you." We ended the call without saying goodbye. At noon the next day, Mom was sitting on the edge of Grandma's bed, with the pink robe folded across her lap. The room had been emptied of medical equipment, but the marks remained. 2 dents in the carpet showed where the bed rail had rested. A white rectangle on the wall marked the place behind the oxygen concentrator. The nightstand still had a pale ring from Grandma's water glass. Dad stood in the closet holding 2 nearly identical navy cardigans. "She doesn't need both," he said. "She doesn't need either," Mom replied. "You know what I mean." "No, Paul, I don't know what any of us mean anymore." He hung both cardigans back up and left. I found the photo albums on the bottom shelf of the bookcase. 6 thick volumes, all labeled in Grandma's handwriting. Mom had already put blue tape on 3 and yellow tape on 3. "What do the colors mean?" I asked. "Blue is family. Yellow is donation. You're donating photo albums? They're duplicates." I opened the top yellow album. Every page held photographs of strangers from the 1940s and 50s, with names written beneath them. Helen and Frank at Lake Erie, Joan's first apartment, Ruth with Betty before the bad haircut. These aren't duplicates. I don't know those people. Grandma did. Most of them are dead. That doesn't make them scenery. Mom's fingers tightened around the robe. "Then what do you want me to do with them? I'll take them. You can't keep everything." I'm taking 6 albums and a ceramic bird, and a bowl, colander, sewing machine, tools, fabric, my tools. I didn't say they weren't. The robe slid from her lap. She caught it by one sleeve and pressed the fabric to her face. I waited. When she spoke, her voice was muffled. She wore this the morning my father died. I sat beside her. I came over and she was making toast, Mom continued. Just standing in the kitchen in this robe, scraping burnt parts into the sink. I thought she didn't understand what had happened. Maybe she didn't yet. She understood. She said the funeral home wouldn't come faster because her toast was cold. That sounded so much like Grandma I could see her buttering the surviving edge. Mom lowered the robe. I wanted her to cry. Isn't that awful? No. I wanted her to look as bad as I felt. You wanted to recognize it. Her eyes filled. She never let me help her. The sentence irritated me on instinct. I almost listed every request Mom had declined. Instead, I looked at the robe between us. Sometimes she made helping difficult, I said. Mom laughed through her nose. That's the nicest criticism you've ever made of her. She wasn't easy. No, she liked people best when they did exactly what she wanted without being told. I wonder where you got that. Mom gave me a sideways look. Careful. We sat quietly. Then she said, Your brother always looked like he might disappear. He did disappear. That's what I mean. New city, new business, new plan. Every time he came back, I thought if I gave him enough this time, maybe he'd stay. And me? You were always there. It was not an apology, but it was the most honest description of the system I had ever heard from her. So I got less because you trusted me more. I suppose that's how it felt from my side. It felt different from mine. I know that now. I looked at her. She wiped one cheek. Don't look so shocked. I'm adjusting. Grant gets that expression from you. Grant's face is much larger. She smiled. Then she folded the robe into a neat square and put it in the yellow donation box. Are you sure? I asked. No. She moved it to the blue box. That's the problem. I helped her finish the closet. I did not decide for her even when she held up a blouse and waited. Sometimes she kept it. Sometimes she folded it for donation. Once she threw a pair of slippers toward the wrong box and had to crawl under the bed to retrieve one. We laughed harder than the situation deserved. At one point, Dad appeared in the doorway, saw us laughing with Grandma's clothes spread everywhere, and backed out without asking for anything. It may have been the wisest decision of his marriage. Gran arrived carrying 2 pizzas and wearing a dark suit. Mom stood. Your interview. Second interview. You didn't tell me you had a first one. It was this morning. How did it go? They invited me back. She hugged him. He held the pizza boxes away from her body. Careful. One's extra cheese. She released him. When is the second? Monday. The closing is Monday. Interview at 9, closing at 3. You can do both. He looked at me. Apparently, adults can attend multiple appointments without Nell coordinating them. Unconfirmed, I said. He smiled and put the pizzas downstairs. Mom called after him, Are we eating here? Unless you want pizza in the locked room. I wanted to do one last proper dinner. That requires cooking, and everyone you usually make cook has unionized. Mom looked at me. I like unions, I said. We ate at the yellow kitchen table, the one Cal had claimed and Mom had always hated. Grant had bought paper plates, napkins, drinks, and a salad nobody touched. Dad complained that pizza had become too expensive. Mom complained that he had ordered mushrooms. Dad ate 3 pieces with mushrooms. Marcy arrived halfway through with Agnes's future owner, her nephew Ron, who looked at the wingback chair and said, This is bigger than you described. Marcy replied, You're smaller than your mother described, but we'll make it work. Grant helped Ron carry the chair downstairs. No one asked me which way to turn it. Lorraine came for her footstool wearing choir rehearsal clothes and brought a lemon cake. Gloria called from Arizona to confirm her chairs were safely in Dad's garage. Grant put her on speaker so she could personally tell him not to stack anything on them. I understand, he said. Say it back. I will not stack anything on Gloria's chairs. Your father either. Dad, eating cake, muttered, "These people think I'm an idiot." Marcy said, "Not all of them know you." For an hour, the house sounded alive. Adults moved through rooms carrying boxes, arguing over tape, calling names from labels. Grant found buyers for 2 lamps among Grandma's church friends. Dad repaired a loose drawer without turning it into a speech. Mom gave Marcy a set of dessert plates, then took them back, then gave them again with the condition that Marcy use them instead of saving them for dead people. I stood in the dining room beside the open ceiling and listened. It would have been easy to call the evening healing. Families liked that kind of word because it made a temporary absence of yelling sound permanent. Then Mom brought out a box marked Nell. Inside were old birthday cards, a sweater I had given Grandma, a framed photograph of my college graduation, and a stack of receipts held together with a rubber band. "What are these?" I asked. Mom looked over my shoulder, probably things she paid for. They were mine. Pharmacy purchases, hardware store charges, groceries, the emergency plumber. Each receipt had a small N in the corner, written by Grandma. She kept track, Grant said. She liked records. He picked up a receipt for the stair rail. $680? It was custom. "You paid this?" "Yes." "Did she pay you back?" "Sometimes." He looked through the stack. "How much is here?" "I don't know." Dad said, "You should total it." "No. If the estate owes you, it doesn't. But Mom marked them. She marked everything." Grant held up a receipt from the home care agency. "This one's $4,000. That was Grandma's money." I wrote the check because her hands shook. He returned it to the stack. Mom said, "You should still go through them." "No, they aren't an invoice." "Then why did she save them?" "Because she knew nobody else saw what things cost." The room went quiet. Dad looked toward the ceiling hole. Mom sat at the dining table. "I saw. You saw numbers. You didn't see the choice every time." "What choice?" "Whether to call you, call Grant, or solve it." Grant said, "You could have called." "I did." He flinched. Mom touched the edge of one receipt. "Why didn't you tell me you were paying for groceries?" "Because the time I did, you asked whether Grandma was buying name brands. I was trying to understand the bill. You were trying to make the bill my fault. That isn't fair. No, it was $40. That was the point." The fragile piece of the evening cracked, not dramatically, but enough for all of us to hear it. Mom stood. "I don't want to fight on the last night." "It isn't the last night," Grant said. "We still have 3 days. I wanted one memory of us here that wasn't horrible." Marcy, washing a cake knife in the kitchen, said, "Then pick one from 20 years ago. Tonight already happened." Mom's shoulders dropped. I put the receipts back in the box. "I'm not totaling them," I said. "I'm not asking to be repaid. I just want everyone to stop pretending I gave nothing because I didn't need rescuing afterward." Grant sat across from me. "I don't think that," he said. "You did a week ago. I was wrong a week ago." Dad rubbed his forehead. Mom looked at the floor. Nobody rushed to make Grant's admission less uncomfortable. Maybe that was why it felt real. After everyone left, I went upstairs for the last fabric box. The locked room held only the workbench, the empty cabinet, and the cedar chest. Without the furniture and bolts of cloth, the exposed wall looked larger. Grant stood near the window with a roll of blue tape looped around one wrist. "You're taking the chest tonight," I said. "That's the plan." "Where?" "Mom and Dad's garage. Gloria owns most of that now." I cleared a space. He bent and lifted the cracked lid. The college sweatshirt remained folded beneath the blankets. "Do you know how to fix this?" he asked. "Yes." He waited. I did not offer. Finally, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll figure it out." Together, we carried the chest downstairs. This time, when his end dipped, he corrected it before I had to say anything. We got the chest into the bed of Dad's truck, with one corner resting on Gloria's folded lawn chairs. "Those aren't Gloria's dining chairs, are they?" I asked. "No, Dad's." "You're sure?" "No, but I'm willing to let this become his problem." He pulled a moving blanket over the cracked lid and secured it with a bungee cord. The cord slipped off one corner. Use two, I said. I know. He attached a second. And cross them. I said, I know. You're putting a broken wooden chest in an open truck bed. You're standing 6 feet away trying to drive. I'm preventing wind damage. It survived 26 years in Grandma's garage because it wasn't traveling 50 miles an hour. He crossed the cords. Happy? No, but the chest has a chance. Grant leaned against the tailgate. The suit for his interview hung in a garment bag from the truck's rear hook. Are these good enough? He asked, tugging at the knee of his jeans. For the interview? The suit pants. I can't see them through the bag. You've seen the suit. Funeral. You lost the tie in a bathroom. I found the tie. You see why I don't ask you for things? I closed the tailgate. You just asked me about your pants. That was a limited consultation. Mom appeared at the front door holding a box marked bathroom. Where does this go? Grant and I looked at each other. Where do you want it? I asked. If I knew, I wouldn't be asking. What's inside? Linens, medicine, hair things. Trash the medicine, Grant said. Donate unopened linens. Keep whatever hair things you want. Mom stared at him. What? He asked. She shifted the box in her arms. Nothing. That was helpful. He looked alarmed by the compliment. Dad drove the chest to their house. Grant followed to make sure it was put inside the garage rather than left in the driveway under a tarp, which was Dad's preferred storage method for anything he expected to address this week. I stayed long enough to remove the last fabric scraps from the locked room. The windowsill was bare. Pale rectangles on the wallpaper showed where Grandma's framed samplers had hung before the wall was opened. A strip of blue painter's tape clung to the door frame at shoulder height, left from when I marked the safe path across the floor. I pulled it off. The door still caught where the floor had swollen. I pushed it open, then closed it, then opened it again. Habit made me check the lock, even though there was nothing left to protect. From downstairs, Mom called my name. I waited, wondering if she might solve whatever it was before I answered. Nell? What? Do you know whether the donation center takes pillows? No. You've donated pillows before. They changed their rules. When? I don't know. She appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Can you call? No. Her face tightened automatically, then relaxed as if she had caught herself using the wrong muscle. I'll look it up, she said. Okay. She remained there. What? I asked. Nothing. You're staring. I'm adjusting. The word made me smile despite myself. The remaining days passed in questions I declined to answer. What time did the trash service come? Where had Grandma kept the spare garage remote? Should the refrigerator be emptied if Cal and Rena were keeping it? Did funeral homes want extra copies of the death certificate back? Could the church use 12 cans of low-sodium soup? Mom asked most of them. Dad asked some and disagreed with the answers. Grant started responding before I did. Trash comes Thursday. Remote in drawer beside furnace. Yes, empty fridge. No idea. Call funeral home. Nobody wants that soup. He was wrong about the garage remote. It was in a ceramic cup above the dryer. Dad found it after 40 minutes and posted a photograph in the group as if he had located a missing aircraft. I reacted with a thumbs up. Grant sent me a private message. Don't encourage him. The morning of the closing, the house looked larger and less valuable. Without Grandma's photographs, lamps, blankets, an improbable collection of baskets, every flaw became visible. The living room rug had hidden a dark stain shaped like Florida. The hallway mirror stayed for Rena, but without coats beneath it, the wall looked too tall. Even the sympathy flowers were gone, their leaves swept from the mantel. I arrived to collect the workbench before the final walkthrough. Grant had borrowed the dented white van from Ed Everett, who apparently remained willing to rent vehicles to people he refused to perform rushed structural repairs for. You paid him? I asked. In cash and humility? Which cost more? Cash. We removed the vise from the bench and carried the top down separately. Dad had offered to help, but he was at the title office with Mom reviewing numbers nobody could improve. Grant wore his interview suit. The navy jacket fit well. The pants were slightly too long. "Your pants are fine," I said. "I didn't ask. You've looked down at them 6 times. I'm checking for plaster dust. How did the interview go?" They asked where I saw myself in 5 years. "What did you say?" "Not owning a restaurant, that's honest." They laughed. "That's promising." They also asked why I wanted a regional supply sales job. "What did you say?" "That I'm good with people, I understand restaurants, and I'd like to sleep through a night without wondering whether a freezer compressor is dying." All true. He lifted one end of the workbench top. "I hate when you approve," he said. "I can criticize your pants again, please." They bunch at the ankles. "Thank you." We loaded the bench into the van. He had arranged the legs, vise and tool shelf, in the order they would be unloaded. Either he was learning or he had finally read one of his own action item lists. Rena and Cal pulled up before we finished. Rena walked through each room carrying the original furniture list. Cal checked windows and faucets. They were polite but careful, people who had already learned that friendliness did not eliminate the need to count. "The yellow table's here," Cal called from the kitchen. "Congratulations," I said. "It has survived another transfer of power." He ran his palm across its faded top. "Rena hates it." From the dining room, Rena said, "I hate that he likes it." "You'll understand my mother," I told her. Grant checked the basement with Cal. Rena and I went upstairs. She stopped outside the locked room. The door stood open. "Looks bigger empty," she said. "It feels smaller to me." She entered along the safe path, looked at the removed flooring, then up at the exposed studs. Simone's temporary markings remained in black pencil. "We signed with her," Rena said. "She starts in 3 weeks. That's good. She wants to salvage the original floor where she can. Grandma would like that." Rena looked at the empty fabric cabinet. "Is this staying? It belongs to the house. I thought maybe you'd want it." I ran my fingers along one shelf. Grandma had penciled measurements there. 42 inches for Marcy, 3 yards blue wool. Nell replaced scissors. "No," I said. "It belongs in this room." "You're sure?" "No." She smiled. "Your mother said that about the table. It may be hereditary." Rena folded the furniture list. "I'm sorry this was difficult," she said. "It wasn't because of you. I know. I'm still sorry." Grant appeared in the doorway. "Cal found a leaking basement faucet," he said. Rena raised one eyebrow. "I tightened it," he added. "Did you tell him?" He watched me. Progress. He took the remark without defense. Rena went downstairs. Grant remained in the doorway. "You leaving that cabinet?" he asked. "Yes." Grandma loved it. Grandma loved storing things. She loved knowing where they were. That too. He looked around the room. "I thought there'd be jewelry," he said. "What?" When I first got the key. "I thought maybe you were being weird because Grandma had jewelry in here or cash in a mattress. There wasn't a mattress. I know that now. You genuinely thought I was hiding treasure. I thought you were hiding something. I was hiding rotten wood because Grandma asked me to. I know." He touched the blue key, still in the lock. "She asked me to come up here," he said. "More than once." "Yes." I kept thinking there'd be another job. There was. The chest. The chest. The window latch. One shelf she wanted moved. What shelf? She thought the fabric cabinet would look better on the other wall. He looked at the cabinet and then at the other wall. It wouldn't. I know. We moved it once and moved it back before lunch. You did it anyway? She was 86. Sometimes lifting furniture was faster than arguing. He smiled faintly, then his face settled. "I'm sorry you did all that alone." I looked at him. He didn't add a reason. He didn't explain the restaurant, Mom, his messages, or what Grandma should have said more clearly. The apology stood there without scaffolding. "Thank you," I said. His phone rang before either of us had to decide what came next. It was Dad. Grant answered. "We're almost done." Dad spoke loudly enough that I could hear individual words without understanding the sentence. No, don't sign anything else, Grant said. There shouldn't be anything else. More loud words. Dad, the number is the number. We knew the number. He closed his eyes. No, Nell didn't cost $40,000. I looked away. The room cost $40,000, he continued. It cost that before she opened the door. Dad's voice rose. Grant stepped into the hall. I sold it without looking. If you need a person, use me. He ended the call. You didn't have to do that, I said. Yes, I did. Dad will blame me anyway. He can multitask. Cal called that they were ready. We went downstairs. Rena held out her hand to Mom when she and Dad arrived from signing. Mom handed over the front door keys, the garage remote, and a typed page explaining which windows stuck. She had solved that page without me. Cal shook Dad's hand. Dad managed to say he hoped they enjoyed the house without mentioning the price. Grant gave Rena the blue key. What's this one? She asked. The upstairs room. She looked toward the stairs. We probably won't lock that. No, Grant said. I don't think you should. Mom stood in the front hall after everyone else walked outside. Her eyes moved from the mantel to the staircase to the small mark near the kitchen doorway where Grandma's shoulder had rubbed the wallpaper over years. Ready? Dad asked. No, she said. He reached for her hand. For once, he did not tell her they had to go. We stood there until she walked out on her own. At the diner afterward, Mom ordered pie for the table. Dad discussed the final numbers while Grant tore the paper wrapper from a straw into tiny strips. There's enough to cover everything, Mom said. Funeral, utilities, the roof balance, taxes, and you keep the rest, I said. She looked at Grant. He shook his head. Dad pushed his coffee away. This family has become very comfortable throwing money away to prove points. Grant said, the house was worth what they paid. It was worth $40,000 more before Nell showed them the room. I set down my fork. Grant turned to him. Stop. Dad's jaw tightened. I'm stating a fact. No. You're finding a backup person to blame because the usual backup quit, Mom whispered. Grant. He kept looking at Dad. She didn't lose the money. She just stopped making our mistakes disappear. The server arrived with pie and sensed enough tension to place it down silently. Dad looked at me. So what now? You're done with all of us? No. Could have fooled me. I'm done being the person everyone calls before trying anything themselves. Mom folded her hands. What does that mean? It means if you need a phone number, you look it up. If Dad needs an appointment, he makes it. If Grant loses a tie, he checks the bathroom. Grant nodded. Fair. It means holidays happen because all of us plan them, or they don't happen. Mom's face tightened. You'd let Christmas disappear over a principle? I'd let the rest of you notice how it gets made. No one spoke. I stood, put money beside my plate, and took my coat. Mom said my name. I waited. She looked at the pie, the table, Grant, then Dad. I don't know what to say. That's okay. I walked outside. For once, nobody called me back. I sat in my car until the diner windows turned dark with reflection. Through the glass, I could see Mom cutting the pie into uneven pieces. Dad was talking with both hands. Grant looked toward the parking lot once, but didn't reach for his phone. Nobody came after me. It felt terrible. It also felt like air. The family group stayed quiet until the next morning, when Mom asked whether anyone had canceled Grandma's newspaper. Grant answered, I'll call. 20 minutes later, he wrote, Done. Mom reacted with a heart. Dad asked if the refund would come by check. Nobody answered, and somehow the family survived. Grant got the supply sales job. He told us with a photograph of the offer email in the message. Officially boring. Mom responded with 6 exclamation points. Dad wrote, Good benefits? I sent Grant a private message. Congratulations. Don't quit before lunch. He replied, Lunch is provided during orientation, so after lunch, he stayed. His territory covered restaurants and institutional kitchens across 3 counties. He knew which owners paid late, which freezers failed first, and why cooks lied about how often they cleaned ventilation filters. For once, his old failures were useful without being rewritten as victories. The salary was less than he wanted. The schedule belonged to somebody else. His manager was a woman named Tasha, who was younger than he was, and unimpressed by charm unless it arrived with accurate mileage reports. He complained about her twice, then admitted she was usually right. Without the money from Grandma's house, he sold his truck to clear the last restaurant expenses. He bought a used gray crossover that made a clicking sound when he turned left. Mom offered to help pay for the truck. He said no. She called me afterward, not to ask me to change his mind, but because she didn't know what to do with the feeling. "I'm proud of him," she said, and a little hurt. "Because he didn't need you? Because he wouldn't let me?" "That might be different. I'm trying to believe that." The first holiday planning message came from Mom. What would everyone like to do for Thanksgiving? She did not write. "Nell, can you host?" I waited an hour before answering, partly because I was working and partly to see whether the world would end. Grant offered to bring rolls and wine. Dad volunteered to handle the turkey, which caused Mom to call me privately. "Your father has never cooked a turkey. He can read. He doesn't follow recipes. He can experience consequences. It's Thanksgiving." "Yes." She was quiet. Then she said, "Would you bring a salad? One dish, a direct request, no schedule hidden inside it." "Yes." Dad bought a turkey large enough to feed 23 people, forgot to remove the package from the cavity, and had to cook it an extra hour. Grant arrived with rolls but no wine because he had left the bottle on top of his crossover while searching for his keys. The wine survived the first turn out of his apartment lot and died near a stop sign. We ate late. Nothing matched. Mom's potatoes cooled before the turkey was ready. My salad took up too much room on the table. Grant used a corkscrew on a backup bottle and pushed the cork into it instead. Nobody asked me to repair the meal. It was one of the better Thanksgivings we'd had. That did not mean everything improved. Dad remained offended by my refusal to total Grandma's receipts. He believed my not asking for repayment was designed to make him feel guilty, which gave me more power than asking would have. For a month, he communicated through Mom whenever possible. Then he needed the number for the plumber I had used at Grandma's house. He texted, "What was name of plumbing company?" I wrote, "Search your texts from March." I sent it then. He replied, "Would be faster if you tell me." I put down the phone. An hour later, another message arrived. Found it. I reacted with a thumbs up. Mom sometimes caught herself. Sometimes she didn't. She called one Saturday and asked whether Grant's new insurance covered dental cleanings. "I don't know. You helped him choose the plan." "No, I didn't. I thought you did. He chose it." "By himself?" "Apparently." There was a pause. "Well," she said. "Good." Another time, she asked if I could remind Dad about his cardiology appointment. "No." He forgets. He has a calendar. He doesn't look at it. "Then put it somewhere he looks." She sighed. The next time I visited, his appointment card was taped to the television remote. He made the appointment. No one thanked me. That was the strange part of withdrawing from a family job. At first, I had imagined my absence would be dramatic. I thought Thanksgiving would collapse. Dad would miss every appointment. Mom would sit among unpaid bills, and Grant would arrive at my door holding a broken life by one handle. Instead, things became sloppier. Then other people did them. Mom bought the wrong paper towels. Dad scheduled appointments at inconvenient times. Grant forgot Lorraine's footstool was no longer his responsibility and called her twice after she had already picked it up. The world did not become fair. It became shared. I drove past Grandma's house once in December. The sold sign was gone. A construction container sat in the driveway. Upstairs, the crooked shade had been removed, and the locked room's window showed bright plastic sheeting behind the glass. I slowed, but did not stop. Rena sent me a photograph after the repair was finished. The original floor had been saved except for one narrow strip near the wall. The fabric cabinet remained where Grandma had put it. Rena had painted the exposed wall section a soft blue after Simone repaired the framing. She wrote, "Thought you might want to see. Door doesn't stick anymore." I stared at that sentence longer than the photograph. Then I wrote, "Looks beautiful. Thank you for showing me." I did not tell my family until Mom asked whether I had heard from the Hendersons. When I showed her the picture, she touched the screen over the fabric cabinet. She would have hated that blue. She liked blue. She liked dark blue. That's practically gray. It's their room now. Mom withdrew her hand. "Yes," she said, "it is. The townhouse appeared in February. It was brick, narrow, and attached on both sides to neighbors whose television preferences I would eventually learn through the walls. The kitchen needed cabinet handles. The upstairs bathroom had a tile border featuring tiny blue seashells despite being several hundred miles from an ocean. I loved it immediately. The second bedroom faced south. Light filled it from late morning until sunset. There was enough wall space for my tools, enough floor space for Grandma's sewing machine, and a closet deep enough to hold fabric without becoming a historical site. My offer used almost every dollar my parents had asked me to risk. I signed anyway. At the closing, the woman across the desk slid the keys toward me in a plain white envelope. There were 3 of them, none marked with blue tape. I went to the townhouse alone before telling anyone it was official. The rooms echoed. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere next door, a man sneezed with surprising authority. I stood in the bright second bedroom and imagined the workbench beneath the window. Then I called Mom. She cried, not because I had bought the house without her. At least that was not the reason she gave. "You have your room," she said. "I have several. You know which one I mean." She offered to help me move. I hired movers, but I let her line the kitchen cabinets and complain about my choice of shelf paper. Dad installed new cabinet handles after asking which style I wanted. He brought 2 options instead of buying whatever he preferred and calling the result practical. Grant was traveling for work on moving day. He sent me a photograph of a restaurant freezer with the message, "Can't make it. This thing is warmer than Grandma's dining room." I replied, "Everything was warmer than Grandma's dining room." He sent a laughing face and then, surprisingly, no request. Mom arrived the following weekend carrying a cardboard box. "What's that?" "Things I kept and then decided you should have." "That's dangerous." "I know." Inside was Grandma's pink robe, 2 photograph albums, the kitchen timer shaped like a tomato, and a set of measuring spoons held together with string. "I thought you kept the robe," I said. "I did." "You don't want it?" "I want you to have it." That isn't the same answer. Mom looked around my living room. Half the pictures were still leaning against walls. A lamp stood on the floor because my side table had not arrived. "I keep thinking I'm supposed to bring you things," she said, "or ask you to do things. I don't know how to just come over. You drove here with a box. Next time, bring nothing." "What if I bring lunch? That's still something." "People bring lunch." "Fine, bring lunch." She smiled, relieved to have a rule. Then she became serious. "Tell me what you need, Nell." My first instinct was to say nothing. I stopped myself. "I need you to visit when nobody has a problem. I can do that. I need you to ask how I am and wait long enough for the answer." Her eyes dropped. "I can try. And I need you not to use Grant's emergencies as a way to make me prove I love him." She looked up. "I didn't know I did that." "I know." We stood beside the box. "What do you need right now?" she asked. I considered the question. "Help me hang the curtains." Mom smiled. "I brought a drill." "Of course you did. We hung them crooked and left them that way until Dad visited. Grant came over in April. He called from the street and said he needed help carrying something. I almost said no on instinct. Then I looked through the window. The cedar chest protruded from the open back of his gray crossover, secured with 2 crossed bungee cords. I went outside. "You remembered," I said. "You traumatized me." The clicking sound from the front wheel had become louder. "You should get that checked." "Appointment Tuesday. Who made it?" "I did. Congratulations." "Don't." We lifted the chest. He had replaced the cracked lid with cedar that was slightly lighter than the original wood. The right corner sat higher than the left. One hinge was new, the other old. The finish showed a run near the back where he had applied too much oil. It was solid. "You made a new support," I said. "I watched 14 videos. That many?" "The first 13 disagreed with you, and the 14th made the same pencil marks." He had left my measurements along the inside edge. Grandma's old scratches remained beneath them. We carried the chest into my living room and set it near the window. "Why is it here?" I asked. "I wanted you to see it in daylight. You brought furniture across town for an inspection? Limited consultation." I opened the lid. It moved smoothly until the last inch, where it pulled slightly to the right. "The hinge is off." "I know. You could reset it. I could also live with it." I looked at him. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. That isn't your nothing face. It's good. The chest? The chest is uneven." "Thank you. The work is good." He looked down at the lid. "Grandma would have found 5 things wrong," he said. "She would have praised it to strangers and told me to redo the hinge. Absolutely." He smiled. He had rented a small apartment near his sales territory. The cedar chest was going at the foot of his bed. He had not opened another restaurant. He said he still thought about it whenever he passed an empty storefront, but now he kept driving. I made coffee. He drank his with cream. Mine was black. While it brewed, he wandered down the hall and stopped outside the bright second bedroom. The workbench stood beneath the window. My tools hung on an open pegboard. Grandma's sewing machine waited against the wall, its gold flowers polished but still worn. "You leave this door open?" he asked. "Usually." He stepped to the threshold but did not enter. "Can I see?" I handed him his coffee and moved aside. He walked into the room carefully, though every floorboard was sound. I followed him in and left the door open behind us.